Chapter 3165. The initiative was in Ji Tianqing's hands. The Lian heir, Liang Jianqing, and the others were in a very passive situation. They could neither advance nor retreat. But Ji Tianqing was still slaughtering the army, and it was only getting more and more intense. As time passed, batch after batch of elite experts were reduced to a bloody mist by the sword lights and gales. The Lian heir and the others could not sit by and do nothing. They had to think of a way to resolve this situation. It was impossible to suppress or stop Ji Tianqing. No matter how they attacked, they could not affect Ji Tianqing. The only solution was to block the sword formation's power and protect the army around them. The Lian heir only hesitated for a few seconds before decisively making his decision. Protect the army with all your strength and block the sword formation's power. As his voice fell, the expressions and eyes of many higher divine lords dimmed. They all thought to themselves that they had known this would be the result. In the end, they still had to sacrifice themselves to protect the army. But they all knew that this was their only choice. They had to protect the army and work together with the army to block the sword formation's attack. The longer they could last, the greater their chances of victory. Once the sword formation's power weakened or when Ji Tianqing could no longer maintain his transparent state, they would have a chance to turn the tide. Swish! The Lian heir was the first to retreat, flying toward a nearby group of elites. He brandished his two sabers and sent out saber images to block the sword formation's attack. This group of elites had more than 400 people. 90% of them were celestial gods, and only 30 some were divine lords. 6 mid-level divine lords and more than 20 low-level divine lords used all their strength to block the sword light and protect more than 400 experts. But the effect was minimal. They simply could not block the sword rain, and all of them were heavily injured. In just 100 seconds, more than half of the celestial gods had died, and 10 lower god lords had died. Even 3 middle god lords had been killed. This group of people was in despair. Their will to fight had completely disappeared, and they began to think of surrendering and fleeing. Fortunately, the Lian heir rushed over and helped them block the majority of the sword lights, greatly reducing the pressure on them. The rate at which this group of people died had clearly decreased by half. Only then did they recover and calm down a lot. Under the leadership of several middle-level divine lords, they joined forces to form a battle formation. They worked together to form a protective shield that blocked the sword rain that filled the sky. Liang Jianqing, Yi Liang'an, and the dozens of higher divine lords were relieved when they saw that Lian heir had taken the lead in rescuing the army and that the results were obvious. Of course, this was only what everyone was thinking. They simply could not imagine that Ji Tianqing was invincible below the divine king level. He could use infinite sky of chaos for long periods of time and maintain a transparent state, becoming one with the world. Whether it was 6 to 10 hours or a day, this army would not be able to harm him. But he did not want to do that and stall for time with Lian heir and the others. Even if the 26 teams surrounded him, they would not be able to injure him. But if the army worked together to block the sword formation's attack, the effect would be more significant, and the rate of casualties would be further reduced. Originally, Ji Tianqing might only need 2 hours to end this battle and slaughter the army. If the 26 teams were to surround him, it would take him 4 hours, 6 hours, or even 10 hours to finish the battle. This place was very close to the Raging Flame Royal City, and the longer the battle dragged on, the more variables there would be. Ending the battle quickly was the right way. Thus, Ji Tianqing ended the infinite sky of chaos state and his body returned to normal. He no longer controlled the heaven-destroying sword formation and allowed it to operate on its own. Under such circumstances, the power of the sword formation would be halved, but he did not need to divert his attention to control the sword formation and could focus on dealing with Lian heir and the others. Whoosh! A white light flashed. Ji Tianqing instantly teleported 800 miles and appeared behind a team. He clenched his left hand into a fist and punched out a mountain-sized dragon-elephant phantom, while his right hand swung the burial of heaven and slashed out a giant sword that was 10,000 meters long. There were only 200 people left in this team, and most of them were injured and covered in blood. They looked very wretched. 3 high-level divine lords worked together to protect this team. They were constantly breaking through the sword light blockade and rushing toward the center of the sword formation. They did not expect Ji Tianqing to suddenly attack. When the dragon elephant phantom arrived and the giant sword descended, it was too late for this team to dodge. Boom! There was a deafening sound as the dragon elephant phantom struck the crowd and blasted a huge hole in the formation. At least 40 experts were blasted into pieces by the dragon elephant divine fist and exploded into a bloody mist. Then, the giant sword that was 10,000 meters long slashed down and split the team in two. 2 mid-level divine lords, 4 low-level divine lords, and more than 50 divine realm experts were also blasted into pieces by the giant sword and died on the spot. Chapter 3166. In the blink of an eye, the number of people in this team was reduced by nearly half. Such berserk power caused the others to be extremely alarmed, subconsciously retreating and fleeing. Only at this time did the other teams realize that the situation was not good. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was no longer in the center of the sword formation and started killing the army, and destroying heaven and earth the moment he attacked, the various teams were filled with grief, indignation, and shock. Under the lead of many high-ranked divine lords, the various teams gathered at a faster speed. They were very smart and did not rescue this team that was attacked, nor did they charge at Ji Tianqing. Because they knew that it was all futile. They could not stop Ji Tianqing at all. The most sensible thing to do was for all the teams to gather as soon as possible. At that time, it would not be so easy for Ji Tianqing to kill them again. Ji Tianqing naturally understood this point as well. Therefore, his mood was also very urgent, speeding up the pace of his attack. Starry River Break. Ji Tianqing gave a cold cry, holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, slashing out a resplendent sword light that was 100 miles long. The sword light was like a starry river, sweeping across the night sky, engulfing the entire team. Only to hear muffled bangs continuously erupting. The 100 or so elites who were lucky enough to survive were reduced to ashes on the spot. Even the 3 high-ranked divine lords protecting this team had their divine bodies destroyed by the starry sword, fleeing into the distance with only their divine sparks remaining. Ji Tianqing did not pursue. In any case, those 3 divine sparks could not escape the sword formation and were destined to fall here. He teleported another 300 miles and appeared above another team. That team had more than 300 people, protected by 2 high-ranked divine lords, still desperately rushing toward the center of the sword formation, wanting to join up with the other teams. After Ji Tianqing appeared, his right hand waved the sword and stabbed out several hundred light blades, instantly killing more than 60 elites. His left palm accumulated 100% power, striking out a mountain-sized golden dragon palm, ruthlessly smashing into the crowd. Only to hear a loud boom explode. The crowd was smashed into pieces. Another 100 elites exploded and died, turning into a bloody mist that filled the sky. Ji Tianqing only used 2 moves to kill more than half of the team. Such a terrifying might caused the remaining people to be horrified. They let out terrified roars and fled in all directions in panic. However, those fleeing elites were quickly turned into dregs by the sword rain that filled the sky. The dozen over divine lord powerhouses that were lucky enough to survive were also caught up by Ji Tianqing and killed one by one. After dealing with this team, Ji Tianqing rushed towards another team and used the same trick to deal with more than 200 elites. Even though that group also had 2 high-level divine lords protecting them, they were practically useless. Ji Tianqing only used 3 breaths of time to execute 4 divine abilities and consummate skills to wipe out the entire team. Even the 2 high divine lords protecting that team were killed by him on the spot, their godhead shattered. Following that, he continuously killed one team after another, sweeping away all obstacles, no one able to stop him. Seeing this scene, Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, Yi Liang'an, and the rest all felt chills all over their bodies, filled with despair. Damn it! The other teams can't withstand his charge at all. Oh, Hao Tian! How can that beast be strong to such an extent? Just who can deal with him? Everyone, speed up. We have to gather no matter the cost. Only by gathering together can we resist him. Otherwise, we'll only be killed off one by him. The Starbreaker 3 elders were also busy until they were drenched in sweat, their appearances very wretched. Seeing Ji Tianqing wreaking havoc everywhere, continuously exterminating one team after another, the 3 people all started roaring with a bellyful of indignation. We said before previously that we absolutely can't split up. We'll definitely be defeated one by one. You guys still didn't believe it. Do you believe it now? The initiative is in his hands. We're in a passive position from start to finish. Previously, the army had 1 to 2,000 people killed, and you guys were in a hurry to rescue them. Now, more than half of the army has been lost. Soon, the entire army will be wiped out. Are you satisfied? You don't listen to the advice of your elders, and you'll be at a disadvantage soon. This old man reminded you before. It's your fault for being so obstinate, resulting in this situation. The Starbreaker 3 elders' complaints made everyone even more vexed. The elites of the various teams were already at a loss for what to do and were filled with shock. When they heard the Starbreaker 3 elders' words, they were even more terrified and despaired. Their fighting spirit collapsed. Finally, 15 minutes passed. Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, Yi Liang'an, and the rest covered the various teams and completed the encirclement at the center of the sword formation. Only 12 teams were able to successfully arrive, and there were only about 3,000 people. As for the other 14 teams, close to 3,000 elites, they were all wiped out by Ji Tianqing. The 12 teams that were lucky enough to survive all appeared very panicked and anxious. After gathering, Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, and the rest hurriedly commanded everyone to form a battle formation and work together to conjure up a shield. Chapter 3167. They watched as batch after batch of elite disciples disappeared under the onslaught of the huge swords that filled the sky. The Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, Yi Liang'an, and the others were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They knew that with their strength, they could not protect the 3,000 elites. The more passive they were, the more desperate they would be and the more they would die. If they went all out and fought back, they might still have a chance at survival. Everyone, give up on defending and attack with me. Even if we die here, we will not allow ourselves to be slaughtered. Lian Er raised his arms and shouted loudly, fiercely strengthening his heart. His tone was full of solemn and stirring feeling. Dozens of high-level divine lords resonated with him, feeling the same way as he did. They all opened their mouths in agreement. As for the 2,000 elites, they had basically been abandoned. In the heaven-vanquishing sword formation, they had no ability to protect themselves or fight back. So it did not matter what they did. Kill. Everyone, let's charge together. Even if we die, we have to drag him down with us. The Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, and the others roared at the top of their lungs. More than 40 upper divine lords and more than 100 middle divine lords followed them, brandishing their swords and sabers as they charged at Ji Tianqing through the rain of swords. Yet, Ji Tianqing used the same trick again and ignored everyone's attacks. He used the infinite sky of turbidity secret technique and became one with the world, his body becoming transparent. More than 100 divine lord experts released divine powers that blotted out the sun. They passed through him without any resistance and scattered across the world, unable to harm him at all. Instead, he focused on controlling the sword formation, releasing its strongest power and quickly slaughtering the 2,000 elites. Many lower divine lords and celestial god experts exploded one after another under the dense rain of giant swords, turning into a bloody mist. 2,500, 2,200, 1,800, 1,500, 1,200. As time passed, the number of people on the battlefield rapidly decreased and the bloody mist in the night sky became thicker and thicker. Soon, 100 breaths of time passed. The number of lower divine lords and heavenly gods had decreased to around 300. All of them were covered in blood and did not look like humans anymore. Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, and more than 40 high divine lords had used all their strength to besiege Ji Tianqing for so long, but to no avail. Everyone was in complete despair. The Lian Er and many of the higher divine lords gave up on attacking and focused on defending against the sword rain. An army of 13,000 was completely annihilated by him. He single-handedly slaughtered more than 10,000 soldiers, and he was completely unharmed. There has never been such a monster in the great Yan Empire in the past 10,000 years. He is not a divine monarch. He was definitely an unparalleled divine king. Apart from divine king powerhouses, who else can be so heaven-defying? Why is this happening? We have more than 10,000 elites, and we have prepared for so long. Why are we still defeated? He. We're all going to die here. None of us will survive. If he doesn't give us a way out, then let's perish together. Many of the higher divine lords roared and cursed angrily, and they sneered in despair. Many of them had even made up their minds to self-detonate and perish together with Ji Tianqing. Of course, this was just their wishful thinking. There were still more than 300 people alive. If they self-detonated, they might not be able to kill Ji Tianqing, but they would definitely blow up all their companions. And at this time, Ji Tianqing also stopped attacking. Under the control of his mind, those 15,000 giant swords floated in the night sky, arranged in a sword formation and as dense as rain. The tips of the swords were all pointed downwards, pointing at the 300 or so lucky survivors. The formless sword intent locked onto everyone's auras, causing them to feel chills all over as they were enveloped by the cold air of death. Ji Tianqing looked down at Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, and the others, and said expressionlessly, "Now that things have come to this, you've already lost. What's the point of fighting like cornered beasts?" Hearing this, the 3-star breakers immediately sneered. "Brat, we admit that you're very strong and unfathomable. We've lost, but we have to die with dignity. Don't even think about humiliating us. You bastard, we'll fight to the last moment and shed our last drop of blood. Are you trying to persuade us to surrender? Stop dreaming. Even if we surrender, you won't let us go. Since we're going to die either way, we'd rather die with dignity." On the surface, the 3-star breakers sounded like they were unyielding and full of sorrow. But Ji Tianqing frowned and sneered disdainfully, "You 3 long-haired freaks have long since grown timid and want to surrender and run, but you're pretending to be righteous. How laughable." Having their intentions exposed, the 3-star breakers immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation and began to curse. Ji Tianqing couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. In any case, the 3-star breakers were already dead in his eyes. His gaze fell on Lian Er and Liang Jianqing, and he said expressionlessly, "Of the two of you, one is Prince Lian's trusted aide, and the other is the sect master of the Heavenly Harmony sect and the Raging Flame branch. Everyone else has to die, but the two of you. As long as you surrender, this Lord can spare your lives." Suddenly hearing these words, the 40+ high divine lords and the 300+ elites all revealed expressions of shock, jealousy, anger, and unwillingness. Many people were roaring in their hearts. "Why do you want to kill us but let the two of them go?" No matter how unresigned they were, they also understood the reason. Lian Er and Liang Jianqing had special statuses. To Ji Tianqing, they still had some value. As for the others, they were like ants. If he killed them, then so be it. The 40+ high divine lords and the 300+ elites were thus sentenced to death. The outcome was irreversible. They knew that they would undoubtedly die, so they dispelled all their delusions and extravagant hopes. With the mentality of perishing together, they instead became even more united, their wills as strong as an impregnable fortress. When Lian Er and Liang Jianqing heard Ji Tianqing's words, they didn't become excited. Instead, they righteously berated, "Dog thief, don't even think about sowing discord. We live and die together, advance and retreat together. Bastard! Don't even think about using us to threaten and murder the young prince. Even if we die, we won't fall into your hands, and we definitely won't cause trouble for the young prince." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and sneered, "The two of you are rather loyal, but I don't know if it's true or false. How about this lord will kill the others first, then have a good chat with the two of you." Hearing these words, the other 300+ people became even more indignant, so angry that they almost vomited blood. Everyone was thinking that they were still alive, so Lian Er and Liang Jianqing pretended to be very loyal, righteously refusing to surrender. Once Ji Tianqing killed them all, Lian Er and Liang Jianqing wouldn't have to worry about anything. They would definitely surrender without any dignity. For a moment, the 300+ people glared angrily at Lian Er and Liang Jianqing, developing hostility towards them. Whether it was because of jealousy, hatred, or unwillingness, this group of people was divided. Lian Er was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He could only use death to show his sincerity and recklessly charge at Ji Tianqing. "Dog thief, I'll fight you to the death." More than 2,000 giant swords flew over, forming a dozen sword blade storms that swept through the crowd. Anyone who was swept up by the storm, regardless of whether they were 9th-level celestial gods or low-level divine lords, was smashed into pieces and their godhead shattered. In less than 100 breaths, the 300+ elites were all killed by the sword light. Not a single one was left. And at this moment, more than half of the 40+ high divine lords were killed by the 10,000 swords. Only a dozen or so high divine lords were left, and they were still resisting, struggling to hold on. These dozen or so people were the strongest and most powerful among the many experts. They included Lian Er, Liang Jianqing, Yi Liang'an, the 4 directions divine generals, and the 3 elders Pexing. However, the 13 high divine lords were all covered in blood. Their hair was disheveled and they were severely injured. They looked very wretched. The high divine lords with the worst injuries had their arms or legs cut off. One of them was almost cut in half at the waist. At this point, the battle was about to end. No matter how the 13 high divine lords erupted or what trump cards they used, they could not change the outcome of their deaths. And Ji Tianqing was still completely unharmed. The heaven-destroying sword formation was still intact, operating firmly and powerfully. 7 Stars Sword. While a high divine lord was blocking the sword rain, Ji Tianqing appeared behind him and stabbed repeatedly with his sword. With a muffled explosion, the high divine lord did not even have the chance to scream before his divine body was destroyed. Pieces of flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The others were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They all charged at Ji Tianqing and attacked with all their might. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and he teleported behind a high divine lord and stabbed rapidly with his sword. Bam! The Burial of Heaven sword instantly stabbed into the high divine lord's back. A dazzling divine light burst out and blasted him into smithereens. A godhead flew out from the bloody mist and instinctively fled into the distance. Ji Tianqing swung his sword again and chopped the godhead into pieces. Just like that, one high divine lord after another was killed by Ji Tianqing. When a few high divine lords died one after another and the 3 elders Pexing were also killed, only the 4 directions divine general, Liang Jianqing, Yi Liang'an, and Lian Er were left. The crowd finally could not hold on any longer. Lian Er and Liang Jianqing looked at each other and used all their strength to self-destruct. And to the south, there were flat grasslands all the way to the outside of Raging Flame Royal City. There was no doubt that the hundreds of thousands of miles of plains had also been flattened, and the earth had been shaved off nearly 100,000 feet. The destructive shockwave spread all the way to the outside of Raging Flame Royal City and gradually dissipated when they were about to reach the city walls. The Great City Protection Array in the north of Raging Flame Royal City was affected by the shockwaves and automatically activated. In the brightly lit Royal City, countless people saw the divine light that covered the sky and the earth, the power that could destroy the world. Countless people were frightened. They screamed and shouted in horror, and some even prepared to run away. For a moment, the originally quiet Raging Flame Royal City became lively. Countless people walked out of their homes and onto the streets, looking up at the night sky in the north and discussing spiritedly. The ordinary people didn't know what was going on. That boundless divine light didn't seem to be the result of a great battle between experts. After all, no one could release such a terrifying divine light. Therefore, many people guessed that it was some kind of anomaly or some kind of omen. And in the royal palace of Raging Flame Royal City, when the king of Raging Flame heard the news, his face darkened on the spot, and his eyes flashed with deep hatred and disappointment. He was well aware that it wasn't some kind of anomaly, but the self-destruction of a divine lord. Moreover, the self-destruction of a divine lord couldn't have such great power. It must have been caused by the self-destruction of many divine lords at the same time. The answer was obvious. He had already guessed that Yi Liang and the Four Directions divine generals, and the experts of the royal palace wouldn't be able to come back. Moreover, the shockwaves of the self-destruction had spread for hundreds of thousands of miles, and the 13,000 troops would definitely have died. However, after the grief and anger, there was only one question left in his mind. The power of the self-destruction was so terrifying. That bastard Tianqing should be dead, right? If they died together, the sacrifice of the 13,000 troops would be worth it. Chapter 3170. Outside the palace. Inside the resplendent palace. This time, Prince Lien wasn't in the secret chamber. He was standing on the roof of the palace, silently gazing at the northern night sky. The cold wind whistled, blowing his long hair and gold-threaded black robe back and forth. Two attendants dressed in black stood quietly behind him. Even though the overwhelming divine power shock wave had dissipated a long time ago, Prince Lien still stood on the roof of the palace. But Prince Lien stood motionless on the roof and continued to stare at the northern night sky without saying a word. King City was bustling with noise and excitement. Everywhere was brightly lit, and people were moving about. Prince Lien wasn't affected at all. He muttered to himself, Lien Air, Liang Jianqing, and the 13,000 people have completed their mission. The battle is over. I, still lost. Prince Lien's voice was low, cold, and solemn, with a hint of exhaustion and self-mockery. But he was strangely calm. He didn't get angry or curse. Perhaps he had already predicted the outcome of tonight's battle. Or maybe he had been defeated by Ji Tianqing for so long that he was numb to it. The two attendants behind him hurriedly comforted Prince Lien. Don't worry, Your Highness. The destructive shock wave must have been caused by the self-destruction of many divine lords. Although second brother and sect leader Liang have sacrificed themselves, their sacrifice was worth it. But their sacrifice was worth it. That D*MN beast Tianqing must have been killed by the explosion. Your Highness, I've already sent a spy to Celestial Dragon Mountain to investigate. Please wait for a moment. We'll have the results and news soon. The status and position of these two attendants were both lower than Lien Air. But they were also Prince Lien's confidants. His personal guards were named Lien San and Lien Si respectively. Prince Lien shook his head and said calmly, no need to wait. I've already guessed the result. If Lien Air and Liang Jianqing could really kill Tianqing, why would they self-destruct? Besides, I know Tianqing's strength and prowess better than anyone else. Even if he withstood the shockwave of the explosion, he would at most be slightly injured. He definitely won't die. Lien San and Lien Si looked at each other, both showing worry and anxiety. But when they saw Prince Lien so pessimistic and depressed, they didn't know how to console him. At this time, Grand Prince Lien looked up at the night sky again and said in a sorrowful tone, "The 9 great sects are gone, and the elites of the He Tian sect branch are all dead. Even the imperial army under Chang Yi's command suffered heavy casualties, their strength greatly reduced. This king spent 20 years to develop this situation and secretly control this divine kingdom, but now, there is nothing left. Tianqing, he really is this king's old enemy." Grand Prince Lien closed his eyes and heaved a long sigh. Prince Lien was still standing on the roof, looking coldly at the night sky in the north. He stood there for a long time before he turned and left. The Sky Dragon Mountain from before had long ceased to exist. The area within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles had long been turned into deep pits and ruins. After the shock wave of the self-detonation ended, Ji Tianqing was unscathed. Lien Er's self-detonation had been suppressed. His divine body and godhead were sealed, and he could not move like a stone statue. Ji Tianqing carried him in his hand and patrolled the battlefield, plundering a small amount of spoils. Most of the spoils were destroyed by the shock wave of the self-detonation. In the end, only about 30 spatial rings, more than 10 pieces of high-grade monarch equipment, and dozens of godhead fragments were left. These items were scattered near the spatial rift and had not been affected by the explosion. What a pity. The spatial rings and equipment of more than 13,000 people must be worth hundreds of millions. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and sighed inwardly. Fortunately, the spatial rings, divine weapons, and godhead fragments he had obtained were all from the high-grade divine lords. Although there were not many of them, they were still valuable. After putting away the spoils, he carried Lien Er and flew into the night sky. Soon, he disappeared into the horizon. He did not continue south, nor did he directly attack Monarch City. This was because he had kept Lien Er alive for the time being. There was still a big use for him. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing flew 200,000 miles away and hid in a remote mountain range. He began to interrogate Lien Er. Lien Er was Prince Lien's absolute confidant and knew a lot of information and secrets. Ji Tianqing wanted to learn more about Prince Lien through this person. Chapter 3171. The Lien Er was very loyal to Prince Lien, and he was unyielding. No matter how Ji Tianqing interrogated him, he kept his mouth shut and didn't reveal a single word. When Ji Tianqing saw this, he wasted no more time and killed the Lien Er. Then, he took out the Lien Er's godhead and circulated his energy to refine it, stripping the memories from his soul. This method was simple and crude, but it had its drawbacks as well. Directly refining the memories from the godhead was often incomplete. There would be many omissions. Moreover, the Lien Er was already heavily injured. He had even ignited his godhead and self-detonated. Although his self-detonation had been suppressed by Ji Tianqing, his godhead was still damaged. Not only was his primal chi greatly damaged, but his strength had also plummeted. Even his memories were incomplete and damaged. Even if Ji Tianqing refined his godhead, he didn't know how much of his soul memories he could obtain. Under such circumstances, whether he could obtain key secrets and information would depend on his luck. A black pagoda hovered in a cave in the belly of a mountain. Ji Tianqing entered the divine pagoda and circulated his energy to refine the godhead in the distorted spacetime. Only 2 hours had passed in the outside world, but he had spent 4 days in the distorted spacetime. These 4 days were enough for him to refine the Lien Er's godhead and strip the memories from his soul. Ji Tianqing was pleasantly surprised by the results. At the same time, he felt slightly depressed and regretful. This was because Ji Tianqing had obtained many of Prince Lien's secrets from the Lien Er's memories. This included Prince Lien's background, experience, inner thoughts and goals, as well as what he had done over the years. He was very clear about it all. Ji Tianqing even knew the thoughts of the great Yan Emperor and the great Yan Prince, as well as many secrets of the great Yan Empire. What interested him the most was that there was a very important thing in Lien Er's memory. 9 years ago, a faction in the great Yan Empire discovered a mystic realm within the empire's borders. Those experts accidentally entered the secret realm and discovered a divine palace. It seemed to be the cave dwelling of a god-king expert. The experts were so excited that they rushed into the cavern with hearts full of excitement. They had thought that it would be a great opportunity. They would be able to obtain a king-grade divine artifact and the inheritance of a god-king. But they did not expect that what awaited them was danger and death. They had triggered a king-grade divine formation outside the cave, and 3 of them had been killed on the spot. Only 2 of them survived, and they fled the secret realm in a panic. After the news spread, many top forces swarmed over, trying all kinds of ways to break the cave mansion's formation. Once the Green Jade Divine Palace opened and the 50 factions wanted to enter, he would put everything aside and rush to the Green Jade Divine Palace. After all, it was his greatest opportunity and hope to become a god king. If he could obtain the Green Jade Divine King's inheritance, cultivation insights, divine artifacts, and divine abilities, he would have a chance to become a god king. Once he became a peerless god king, he would be able to seek revenge on the great Yan Emperor for killing his mother and seize the throne. Then, he would deal with Ji Tianqing, and he would be able to easily kill him and take revenge. After learning this secret, Ji Tianqing was in a good mood. He smiled playfully. You want to enter a god king's palace and obtain his inheritance and king-grade divine artifact? Prince Lien, oh Prince Lien, I'm afraid you won't have a chance in this lifetime. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. Suddenly, he muttered the Green Jade Divine King's name and frowned in confusion. Green Jade Divine King? Where have I heard this name before? Ji Tianqing thought about it seriously for a long time, and finally had an impression of it. I remember now. In my past life, I came to the boundless heaven continent to look for Crimson Sun Divine Gold to improve the quality of the Burial of Heaven sword. I met this person in the Raging Flame Sea area and even fought with him because of a misunderstanding. This person was also a god king who cultivated the Sword Dao and created 2 Sword Dao divine abilities. But he was completely defeated by me in one move. Ji Tianqing's memories immediately became clear. He remembered that when he met the Green Jade Divine King back then, he had exchanged 3 moves with him. Each time, the Green Jade Divine King's sword move was easily broken by him. At that time, the Green Jade Divine King was at the 3rd firmament realm and was traveling the boundless heaven continent, pursuing higher divine Dao realms and sword Dao profundities. Meanwhile, he had just broken through to the God King realm not long ago and was still at the 1st firmament Divine King realm. But he defeated the Green Jade Divine King very easily. It was precisely because of this that the Green Jade Divine King was very shocked and also felt reverence and admiration for him. Not only did the 2 of them not become enemies, the Green Jade Divine King even apologized to him and sincerely asked for guidance on Sword Dao profundities. At that time, Kenshin saw the Green Jade Divine King's sincere attitude and casually gave him a few pointers. In the end, the words woke him up. The Green Jade Divine King came to a realization and bowed and thanked him excitedly. Chapter 3172. Kenshin and God King Azure Jade's interactions were limited to this. After the misunderstanding was resolved, Kenshin enlightened God King Azure Jade, making God King Azure Jade shed tears of gratitude. Kenshin back then had a slightly cold and aloof personality. He did not exchange pleasantries with God King Azure Jade and left straight away. God King Azure Jade also maintained his poise and did not chase after. He stood where he was and bowed, sending Kenshin off respectfully. This was just a trivial matter to Kenshin. It had happened countless times in his life and would not take it to heart at all. But to God King Azure Jade, it should be a major event worth remembering. After all, he had received Kenshin's enlightenment and had an epiphany on the spot. His sword Dao cultivation and strength realm would definitely increase. After the reminiscing ended, Ji Tianqing sighed with a complicated expression. Sigh, in a blink of an eye, more than 1,000 years have passed. I've already reincarnated as a person and changed my appearance. An ordinary god king that I once met by chance is now going to cross paths again. Fate is really strange. Without a doubt, when he learned of the Azure Jade Palace's existence, he decided to head there. To the present him, a god king expert's cave abode was also extremely attractive. He was not interested in God King Azure Jade's cultivation experience and insights, nor did he want to learn. At most, it was just for reference. After all, God King Azure Jade's talent, perception, and strength were all inferior to his former self. What truly interested him was the divine pills, divine artifacts, treasures, and materials that might exist in the Azure Jade Palace. The pills, divine artifacts, and materials collected by a God King expert would definitely be king-grade. And what Ji Tianqing lacked the most now was king-grade divine items. If he could obtain some God King level refining materials, then he would be able to start upgrading the Sword of Burial of Heaven very soon. Once the Sword of Burial of Heaven recovered to God King level, its power would be even more terrifying. Furthermore, the Azure Jade Palace was protected by layers of divine arrays, all king-grade divine arrays. The Great Yan Empire's 50 top factions explored and studied for 9 years but could not see the palace's entrance. But Ji Tianqing did not have such concerns. With his array Dao strength, vision, and experience, cracking it was absolutely easy. However, now was not the time to go to the Green Jade Palace. Moreover, he did not know the exact location of the secret realm. The most important thing right now was to take care of Prince Lien. Ji Tianqing did not waste any time. He immediately ended his cultivation and left the distorted spacetime. He returned to the cave, put away the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda, and flew toward the south. Along the way, he flew over towering mountains and steep ridges. Not far away, he saw endless ruins and deep pits. It was caused by the self-detonation of several high-level divine lords. Even now, dust was still flying everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air. Ji Tianqing probed with his divine sense and saw a large number of armored and black-clothed experts searching around the ruins. He didn't even need to think to know that those people must be Prince Lien and the King of Raging Flame's men. His decisive battle with an army of 13,000 had caused such a huge commotion that the entire Raging Flame royal city was alarmed. It would be strange if the King of Raging Flame and Prince Lien did not send someone to check on the situation. Ji Tianqing increased his speed. Like a stream of light cutting through the night sky, he headed straight for the Raging Flame royal city. While hurrying, he was still thinking in his heart, I hope Prince Lien still has some hope in his heart and did not leave the royal city. As long as he is still in the royal city, tonight will be the day of his death. It was already early in the morning, and there were still 4 hours before daybreak. To Ji Tianqing, time was enough. As long as Prince Lien was still in the royal city, he would definitely die before daybreak. Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. Ji Tianqing flew for 180,000 miles and arrived outside the Raging Flame royal city. Under the pitch-black curtain of night, the Raging Flame royal city sat quietly on the grassland. This majestic city that had existed for 10,000 years was neatly built. It occupied an area of 500 miles and could accommodate millions of people. The main city walls around the city were made of black stone that was hundreds of meters tall. While it was solemn and dignified, its defensive power was also very strong. Although the city walls had been repaired several times in the past 10,000 years. However, the most recent renovation was 1,000 years ago. The strip-shaped boulders that built the city walls were covered with moss, as well as cracks and marks etched by wind and frost. In each of the 4 directions of the royal city, there was a huge city gate that was 800 meters tall. It could allow 12 carriages to enter and exit at the same time. It was incomparably spacious. It was late at night, and the north gate was tightly shut. There were hundreds of city guards stationed under the gate, all of them armed with swords and sabers, waiting in formation. If it was in the past, the royal city would have been quiet and peaceful by now, and the lights would have been much sparser. But tonight, the entire royal city was brightly lit, and hundreds of thousands of people were still moving around outside. Countless God race members gathered together in the streets and alleys, whispering to each other. Even the number of city guards patrolling had increased several times. There were also many mysterious black-clothed people coming and going in and out of the royal city, seeming to be in a hurry. An iron-blooded and solemn atmosphere shrouded the entire royal city, and it also made the people somewhat worried. Many people were guessing whether a great enemy had come to invade. Was the royal city about to be attacked? Ji Tianqing stood outside the north gate, hiding in the clouds, looking down at the royal city of raging flame, quietly observing. The 4 great city defense arrays protecting the royal city had been activated, covering the north, south, east, and west respectively. No matter where Ji Tianqing sneaked into the royal city, he had to break one of the great city defense arrays. Otherwise, he could only go through the 4 city gates and be interrogated by the city guards. Or he could directly force his way through the city gates and kill everyone in his way. In that case, he would alert the King of Raging Flame and Prince Lian before he could get close to the palace. After thinking about it, Ji Tianqing still decided to quietly break the great city defense arrays. The north gate was heavily guarded. Not only were there many city guards patrolling, but there was also a large number of imperial guards lying in ambush. Furthermore, there were more than a dozen divine lords hiding in many houses and buildings not far from the city gate. This was obviously to prevent Ji Tianqing from coming from the north and forcing his way through the north gate. In order not to alert the enemy, Ji Tianqing quietly went to the south gate. He had already used the Divine Eye secret technique to observe and could clearly see the defensive power of the 4 city gates. In comparison, the south gate seemed to be heavily guarded on the surface, with a large number of city guards and imperial guards. But in reality, the south gate's defensive power was the weakest. Choosing to sneak into the royal city from there was, of course, the safest choice. Ji Tianqing flew to the south side of the city wall and quietly burrowed into the ground. After moving 100 feet underground, he was blocked by the 5-colored light shield. So, he used the Divine Eye secret technique to carefully observe the great city defense array. This array had a radius of 100 miles, and it was a Supreme Monarch-level divine array. Its structure was quite complicated, and its defensive power was also very strong. Ji Tianqing could guess that it was most likely set up by many high-level divine lords. Also, it had to be strengthened and reinforced for many years to have such power. However, to Ji Tianqing, this was not a difficult task. Chapter 3173. After a mere 15 minutes, Ji Tianqing saw through the structure of the city-protecting Grand Array. He accurately found the weak point of the Grand Array and started casting his art to crack this flaw. Whoosh! 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 He kneaded divine seals with both hands, releasing hundreds, thousands of divine powers, firing into a certain node of the 5-colored light barrier. Time passed quietly. Half an hour passed very quickly. When Ji Tianqing struck out more than 18,000 strand of divine power, the node collapsed. A fist-sized hole appeared on the resplendent 5-colored light barrier, and it rapidly expanded and enlarged. In a short 2 breaths, that hole became the size of a water vat, enough for Ji Tianqing to pass through. Swoosh! He passed through the hole without hesitation, crossing over the city-protecting Grand Array, and entered the capital. And at this time, something that he did not expect happened. Below the South City Gate, among the 300-plus city guards, someone suddenly let out a cry of surprise. Damn it! Someone is cracking the Grand Array underground, attempting to sneak into the capital. Hurry! Everyone, follow this lord. The person who let out the cry of surprise was a middle-aged man wearing standard armor, his looks unassuming. This person's attire was the same as ordinary city guards, inconspicuous in the crowd. Furthermore, he even wore a mysterious circular jade pendant, suppressing his aura fully, stabilizing around 7th-level celestial deity realm. But in reality, his true strength reached 7th-level celestial deity realm, high-rank divine lord. Swoosh! At the same time that this middle-aged man cried out in surprise, he tunneled underground without hesitation, pouncing toward Ji Tianqing. The 300-plus city guards were stunned for a moment, then they also dived underground under the lead of several captains. Previously, Ji Tianqing used divine sense to sweep across the city guards below the south city gate. It was just a rough observation and he did not take it to heart. Because he knew that the city guards below the gate were all decorations. The ones with real combat strength were the Imperial guards lying in ambush inside the city gate. But he never would have thought that there was actually a high-rank divine lord disguised as an ordinary city guard, and even relied on a divine artifact to suppress his aura, hiding in the crowd. A tiny mistake caused his whereabouts to be exposed, alarming the city guards. Under the lead of the middle-aged Sir God, the 300 city guards quickly arrived near Ji Tianqing. Without saying a word, everyone pulled out their swords and sabers and launched a siege with no regard for their own safety. On the other side, the 500 Imperial Army soldiers lying in ambush at the southern city gate also received the news and signal. Knowing that there were intruders, they all pulled out their swords and sabers and were on high alert. Now that it was a critical moment, all the consecrators had been awakened to protect the safety of the palace. Each of them led a group of elite Imperial guards to guard every direction of the palace. Coincidentally, the 3 inner palace consecrators were nearby and discovered Ji Tianqing, who was breaking the divine formation. The 3 of them attacked without any hesitation. At the same time, they called for reinforcements from the inner palace and the Imperial army. Soon, dozens of saber lights and sword shadows arrived in front of Ji Tianqing and engulfed his figure. Ji Tianqing wasn't worried at all. He swung the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand, sending out 9 dazzling sword lights. Bang! Bang, bang, bang! The sacred giant sword clashed with the saber lights and sword shadows, creating a deafening sound. In a blink, the divine powers of the 3 inner palace consecrators were shattered by the sword lights. Not only that, the 9 giant swords didn't lose their power. They attacked the 3 consecrators separately. The 3 consecrators were shocked. Their expressions changed immediately. They hurriedly performed their ultimate skills to block the attack with all their strength. After another series of muffled sounds, the 3 inner palace consecrators were knocked back and fell into 2 palaces with blood spurting out of their mouths. The defensive divine formations of the 2 palaces were also smashed until divine light flashed chaotically and cracks appeared on them. Ji Tianqing wanted to take advantage of the situation and quickly kill the 3 injured inner palace consecrators. However, another 4 consecrators and more than 1,000 Imperial army hurried to the scene. Everyone's gazes and divine senses locked onto Ji Tianqing, and attacked him without hesitation. Suddenly, deafening battle cries burst out, and the dazzling light of divine spells lit up, and the area became chaotic. Ji Tianqing was besieged and had to give up on killing the 3 inner palace consecrators. He turned to fend off the 1,000 Imperial army. Infinite sky of chaos. In order to save time and divine power, he used his divine powers and his body became transparent. All of a sudden, the overwhelming saber light and sword shadows pierced through his body and scattered on the ground. Most of the divine powers dissipated and their power was absorbed by the world. A small portion of the divine art light shadows blasted into a palace with a radius of 100 feet, instantly turning it into ruins. Ji Tianqing was unharmed and took the opportunity to wave the burial of heaven. Sword light filled the sky. Sword of the breaking sun. God-killing sword. Sword light poured down from the sky and drowned the 4 inner palace consecrators and more than 1,000 Imperial army soldiers. Suddenly, blood and flesh splattered under the sword light. Screams rose and fell. The 40,000 people who were killed were basically the imperial guards, servants, and guards. There were also some members of the royal family. Ji Tianqing didn't do anything. He just stood in the night sky and stared expressionlessly at the majestic temple in the middle of the palace. Secretly, he controlled the operation of the heaven-destroying sword formation and controlled the target of the 10,000 swords. That magnificent temple was the main hall of the royal palace, the most solemn and dignified place. Usually, the ruler of the raging flame country stayed there for a long period of time, discussing court matters with the civil and military officials. It was also in that temple. After the sword formation operated for 40 breaths, 95% of the buildings had disappeared, turning into dust and debris. The temple's defense had also completely collapsed. It was smashed into pieces by the tens of thousands of swords and collapsed into ruins. Only then did a few balls of dazzling divine light fly out from the ruins. Shwa! Shwa! A total of 9 balls of divine light enveloped more than 3,000 members of the divine clan and flew into the night sky. The 9 balls of divine light were unusually strong. Some of them were formed by many defensive artifacts, while others were formed by many powerhouses working together to form a shield. The 3,000 members of the divine clan within the light shield were basically members of the royal family, important officials, and experts of the palace. Under the control of many powerhouses, the 9 balls of divine light flew through the rain of swords and toward Ji Tianqing. While they were still tens of thousands of feet away, a middle-aged man's angry roar came from the golden ball of divine light at the forefront. Tianqing! Stop! The middle-aged man's voice was heavy and majestic, with a tinge of desolation, anxiety, and anger. Ji Tianqing ignored him and continued to operate the heaven-destroying sword formation expressionlessly. He continued to kill the rest of the people in the palace. After a few breaths, the 9 balls of divine light were even closer to him and stopped 10,000 feet away. At this time, the heaven-destroying sword formation had killed thousands of imperial guards, royal family members, servants, and guards. At this point, more than 50,000 people in the palace were almost all dead. Those who were still alive were only the 3,000 people in the 9 balls of divine light. Of course, Ji Tianqing also understood that those 3,000 people were the most respected and powerful people in the palace. Given another 10 breaths of time, he could operate the heaven-destroying sword formation to destroy the 9 balls of divine light and kill all 3,000 people. However, the middle-aged man's angry voice came from the golden ball of divine light at the forefront again. Tianqing! You have already won. I admit defeat. Why do you have to kill all of us? There was no doubt that the middle-aged man wearing a golden dragon robe and a luxurious crown was the king of the country of furious flames, Wuxia. He was tall, had long arms, a square face, and a broad forehead. He had the appearance of a king, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. However, at this moment, he did not have any of his former majesty and loftiness. His brows were tightly knitted, and his expression was sorrowful. His eyes were dim. He had no choice. The palace that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years was destroyed in his generation. The royal family had lasted for tens of thousands of years and had given birth to thousands of bloodline descendants. Now, more than half of them were dead. After suffering such a heavy blow, if he could still remain calm, he would not have been subdued by Prince Lian. Ji Tianqing used his divine thoughts to control the heaven-destroying sword formation and temporarily stopped the attack. Suddenly, 15,000 giant swords floated in the night sky. The tips of the swords were pointed at the 3,000 people in the 9 balls of divine light. The formless sword intent suppressed everything and was incomparably violent. The pressure on the 3,000 people increased sharply. Their faces were pale, and their hearts were filled with fear. Ji Tianqing looked at Wuxia expressionlessly. After sizing him up, he said, you are the king of the country of raging flames? Xue Chang'e nodded and said in a heavy tone, that's right, I am. Ji Tianqing said again, I think you know why I am here. Xue Chang'e was very tactful. He nodded again and said, of course I know. You are here for Prince Lien and me. Ji Tianqing frowned and was about to correct him. Xue Chang'e sighed and bowed deeply. He said in a sincere tone, young Master Tianqing, I have heard of your reputation and deeds not long after you stepped into the kingdom of raging flames. Your strength is strong, and your methods are ruthless. This monarch has never seen anyone like you before. Tonight's battle on Heavenly Dragon Mountain reached the peak and created a miracle. After tonight, your name will spread throughout the great Yan Empire and shock the world. Now that things have come to this, I have already suffered a crushing defeat. I don't want to say anything more. I only ask that young Master Tianqing be magnanimous and let these 3,000 people and the millions of people in the royal city go. No matter what, it's all my fault. I hope you don't implicate the innocent. You are the soaring dragon of the 9 heavens, the divine king's choice. You should have the bearing of a peerless powerhouse. You should not make things difficult for them. To show my sincerity, I am willing to commit suicide on the spot. I hope that young Master Tianqing can fulfill my wish. Chapter 3176. Xue Chang'e and Prince Lien had completely different styles of doing things. He wasn't as cunning and scheming as Prince Lien. In comparison, he was more honest, steady, and a man of his word. Of course, this was the basic quality of a monarch. But overall, Xue Chang'e was much more honest and straightforward. After speaking, he formed a seal with both hands and began to accumulate divine power into the Godhead in his mind. As long as Ji Tianqing agreed and allowed him to commit suicide on the spot, sparing more than 3,000 royal family members and millions of citizens, he would shatter the Godhead without hesitation. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing raised an eyebrow and asked, how did a man of your temperament become Prince Lien's fan? Xue Chang'e was startled, then calmly said, I know you have a blood feud with the young prince, so you must be prejudiced against him. Perhaps in your eyes, the young prince is a scheming, sinister, and ruthless person. But to me, the young prince is my benefactor. Even if I repay him with my life, it won't be enough. If it weren't for little prince's help back then, with this monarch's shrewdness and conduct, how could this monarch have survived the struggle for the throne? How could I have become the monarch of divine nation? Back then, the young prince saved my life and helped me ascend to the throne. Now, even if I die, I can't repay his kindness. Ji Tianqing had heard about the matter between Xue Chang'e and Prince Lien from Nie Feiyan. He also learned about 70 to 80% of it from Lien Er's soul memories. He didn't want to hear more from Xue Chang'e, so he said in a low voice, Xue Chang'e, there's no enmity between us. It's only because you work for Prince Lien that I have to deal with you. But now, I'll give you a chance. You don't have to commit suicide. As long as you hand over Prince Lien or tell me where he's hiding, I'll let you go. The members of the royal family around you, as well as the millions of civilians in the royal city, will be spared from death. The 3,000 people in the 9 balls of divine light immediately revealed expressions of joy, anticipation, and excitement. Their despairing hearts were also illuminated by the light of dawn. Everyone looked at Xue Chang'e, full of hope that he would agree. However, Xue Chang'e's body shook, and his expression became rather unsightly. Especially when he saw the eyes of the people around him become bright and passionate, his expression became even more gloomy. No. Xue Chang'e's tone was firm as he coldly shouted and righteously said, Ben Jun just said that even if I die, it will be difficult to repay little prince's kindness. How can I betray him? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and sneered, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. This is not integrity, this is blind loyalty. Since you are not willing to betray Grand Prince Lien, then I will kill you and everyone else, and then destroy the entire royal city. After he finished speaking, he used his divine telekinesis to control the heaven-destroying sword formation and sped it up. The 15,000 giant swords floating above everyone's heads shone with a brilliant brilliance, releasing an incomparably violent sword intent that would pour down at any moment. The 3,000 people in the 9 clusters of godly light were in a life-and-death situation. Their faces were pale, and their hearts were filled with fear and despair. Many people couldn't bear the enormous pressure and were also afraid of the threat of death. They all opened their mouths to beg for mercy and persuade Xue Chang'e. "Your Majesty, please reconsider. Your Majesty, now is not the time to let your emotions affect your decisions. Your Majesty, please think about the royal family and the officials. If everyone dies here, the God Nation's foundation will be destroyed. Your Majesty. Even if you don't care about our lives, please spare everyone's lives for the sake of the millions of people in Royal City. Those millions of innocent people were innocent. How can you be so stubborn and cause everyone's deaths?" Instantly, many officials of the God Nation began to persuade the king. Some of the royal family members with higher statuses even spoke harshly and reprimanded the king for being insensitive. Xue Chang'e's situation became extremely awkward. He had become the enemy of many royal family members and officials. Everyone blamed him for the deaths of their own people and the deaths of millions of people. This was human nature. Xue Chang'e wanted to be loyal and righteous, but everyone only wanted to live. Who would be willing to let their emotions affect their decisions? Ji Tianqing made it clear that as long as Xue Chang'e revealed Grand Prince Lian's whereabouts, he would spare everyone's lives. But Xue Chang'e didn't agree. He would rather die than betray Grand Prince Lian. No one blamed Ji Tianqing. They could only blame Xue Chang'e for being cold-blooded and heartless. Everyone became agitated and gradually turned from persuasion to crying, reprimanding, and begging. It was as if Xue Chang'e wanted to kill everyone, including the millions of people in Royal City. Xue Chang'e was so angry that his whole body trembled. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. His qi and blood surged, and he spat out a mouthful of old blood. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said, "I admire your integrity and honesty, but I despise your foolish loyalty. If you don't even know how to choose, you don't deserve to be the king of the raging flame divine nation. Reveal Grand Prince Lian's whereabouts, or implicate millions of people to die with you. Choose for yourself." No matter what, it was time to make a choice. Xue Chang'e couldn't avoid it. He endured unparalleled psychological pressure and slowly turned to look at the 9 balls of divine light. His gaze swept over the 3,000 royal family members. From everyone's expression and eyes, he saw the desire and urgency to survive, as well as anxiety and fear. Among them were his concubines and children, as well as his brothers, nephews, trusted ministers, and so on. In the face of death, everyone chose to plead and persuade him. After all, he owed Grand Prince Lian a favor, but they didn't. But everyone's life and death were now in his hands. After a long time, Xue Chang'e looked around and slowly retracted his gaze. He turned around, and his expression became dejected and helpless, as if he had aged a few decades in an instant. He smiled bitterly and lowered his head. He didn't look at Ji Tianqing's expression and said bitterly, "Forget it, forget it. Since I'm the king of the divine nation, how can I act willfully and willfully? At that time, I'll most likely become a fatuous king condemned by everyone. A ruthless king who doesn't care about the lives of his people. A sinner who caused the destruction of the divine nation." Hearing this, the 3,000 royal family members were obviously relieved. They all revealed expressions of relief. Everyone knew that Xue Chang'e couldn't go against the will of the people and could only choose to compromise. As expected, Xue Chang'e's voice was dry as he said, "Young Master Tianqing, I've agreed to your conditions, so please keep your promise. To be honest, when you fought with more than 10,000 soldiers and many divine lords self-destructed, Grand Prince Lian quietly left the royal city. He brought his trusted aides through the teleportation divine formation in the palace and directly arrived at the border of the Raging Flame County, Furious River City. Calculating the time, he should have already left Furious River City and entered the Rock Magus County in the south. This time, he lost to you, and his forces were almost wiped out. He can no longer establish himself in the Raging Flame Divine Nation. Next, he should return to the Great Yan Empire to recuperate for a while. As for where he will go, I don't know. Book Guest House Reading Website. Shouldn't you fulfill your promise? Ji Tianqing collected his thoughts, glanced at him, and said indifferently, this monarch is a man of his word. I will naturally fulfill my promise. With that, he waved his arm and removed the heaven-destroying sword formation. The 20,000 swords that had been hovering in the night sky and covering Royal City immediately disappeared without a trace. Instantly, Royal City, which had been illuminated by the sword light until it was as bright as day, also became dim. The 3,000 royal family members looked as if they had been pardoned. They revealed expressions of joy as if they had just survived a disaster. The tens of thousands of people in Royal City had been trembling with fear and despair. Now that the sword formation had disappeared, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Countless people cried out in surprise and whispered in each other's ears. Many people saw that the once dazzling palace had been reduced to ruins. Everyone was discussing and guessing what had happened in the royal palace. Who was so powerful that they could destroy the royal palace? Could it be that Tianqing, who had been rumored to be the god of slaughter? At the same time, Xue Changyi saw that Ji Tianqing was a man of his word and also breathed a sigh of relief. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, young Master Tianqing, for your mercy." Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "Xue Changyi, I'll give you a word of advice. Grand Prince Lian opposed this monarch, and he won't live long. You don't have to be blindly loyal to him. You must always remember that you are the monarch of the Raging Flame Divine Country. You don't have the right to be willful. You must put the overall situation and the divine country and its hundreds of millions of people before you make any decision. Otherwise, you will destroy the Raging Flame Divine Country sooner or later." Xue Changyi was startled. He didn't expect that Ji Tianqing, who was his enemy, would give him pointers. After frowning and thinking for a moment, he remembered Ji Tianqing's words in his heart and sincerely thanked him. "Thank you, young Master Tianqing, for your pointers. This monarch will definitely remember it." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything else and expressionlessly asked, "Where is the teleportation array leading to the border of Raging Flame County?" Xue Changyi knew that he was leaving Royal City and was secretly relieved. He hurriedly replied, "It's in the Huayang Divine Palace. That's Grand Prince Lian's residence in Royal City. Many years ago, he had this monarch build that divine array in the Huayang Divine Palace." Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and said in a deep voice, "Damn it. With Grand Prince Lian's way of doing things, he will definitely have that divine array destroyed after he leaves. Quickly take this monarch there." Xue Changyi also understood his meaning and didn't dare to delay. Chapter 3178. Although the lives of Xue Changyi, the royal family, and the officials were saved, the palace was destroyed. However, the destruction of the palace and the deaths of tens of thousands of imperial guards, servants, and guards were also a huge loss. It would take a long time to rebuild the palace and reorganize the imperial guards, servants, and guards. It would consume a lot of manpower and resources. This was a heavy blow to the Raging Flame Divine Kingdom. Just treat it as a punishment for me. Give me an unforgettable lesson. Xue Changyi sighed and began to issue orders, dispatching the officials and the royal family to prepare to rebuild the palace. The royal family and the officials who had narrowly escaped death were no longer hostile to Xue Changyi. They happily accepted the orders and went to carry out the mission. Soon, the news spread from the palace and spread throughout the royal city. 2 hours later, at daybreak, all the people in the city knew the whole story. When everyone found out that there was only one person among the thousands of soldiers and strong enemies they had expected, they were all stunned. And when they learned that the person who destroyed the palace and slaughtered tens of thousands of people was Grim Reaper Tianqing, they were even more terrified. Later, another piece of news spread that before Tianqing broke into the royal city, he had fought a decisive battle with more than 10,000 soldiers on Celestial Dragon Mountain. In the end, Tianqing won a complete victory, killing more than 10,000 soldiers and forcing many divine lords to self-detonate. This made the people in the city even more shocked. It was as if they were listening to a heavenly book. This series of news set off a shocking hurricane in the royal city, igniting everyone's enthusiasm. The commoners were suddenly enlightened. No wonder there was a divine light that shot into the sky and covered half of the night sky. More people rejoiced and felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, Grim Reaper Tianqing's target was clear and he didn't attack the people of the royal city. Otherwise, if that sword array had gone all out, the entire royal city would have been turned into ruins, and all the people would have died. Thus, the people felt more and more reverence for Grim Reaper Tianqing. Many people were thinking about the rumors circulating in the Divine Kingdom, saying that Tianqing was a villain and a Grim Reaper who killed people like scything flax. It seemed that the rumors weren't true. That Grim Reaper didn't kill the innocent and had the demeanor of a powerhouse. As time passed, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days passed. The news of the battle and the destruction of the royal palace also spread out of the royal city and spread throughout the raging flame Divine Kingdom. A few days later, this series of news spread out of the raging flame Divine Nation and spread to the surrounding countries, including the Great Yan Empire. As a result, Ji Tianqing's reputation as the god of slaughter spread far and wide. The people of various countries were discussing his achievements and miracles. When all kinds of news spread out of the Raging Flame Divine Country, Ji Tianqing was also about to leave the Raging Flame Divine Country. That night, he left King City through the teleportation formation and arrived at the border of Raging Flame County, appearing in Raging River City. Prince Lien did not disappoint him. As soon as he stepped out of the teleportation array and appeared on a tall altar, he was besieged by dozens of elites. There were a total of more than 70 people, all of whom had the strength of 8th level celestial deity realm and above. The leaders were 4 lower divine lords. Without a doubt, these people were all Prince Lien's subordinates, and they had been ordered to guard this place. Prince Lien had given them the task of killing anyone who walked out of the divine array. The result was indisputable. Ji Tianqing easily killed more than 70 experts, including the 4 lower divine lords. Then, he left Raging River City before dawn and continued south. The Raging Flame County was located in the center of the Raging Flame Divine Country, and the Rockwitch County was to the south. Further south, he still had to pass through 5 counties to leave the Raging Flame Divine Country and enter the Great Yan Empire. Ji Tianqing calculated the time. If he flew at full speed, it would take him about 20 days to leave the Raging Flame Divine Country. This way, he would definitely not be able to catch up to Prince Lien. Wasting so much time would also give Prince Lien more time to prepare. On the way, he had been pondering and analyzing. Prince Lien was thoroughly defeated in the Blood Flame and Raging Flame Divine Nations, and his subordinate forces were all eradicated by me. Although he had secretly recruited a few forces in the other 2 divine kingdoms and built up a team of forces, the divine kingdom as compared to the Blood Flame and Raging Flame Divine Nations, his foundation in those 2 divine nations is still shallow. Thus, when he fled the Raging Flame Divine Kingdom, he definitely wouldn't go to those 2 divine kingdoms. His only choice is to escape back to the Great Yan Empire. This was the first step of Ji Tianqing's analysis. It was reasonable and basically the same as what Xue Changyi had said. Then, Ji Tianqing began to ponder another problem. Prince Lien's injuries should be more or less healed. After many battles, he's already seen my strength and knows that he's no match for me. Therefore, he'll definitely hide and recuperate after escaping back to the great Yan Empire. He'll only dare to seek revenge after he's accumulated enough strength. Before he's confident enough, he'll definitely hide. But where will he hide? The imperial capital of the great Yan Empire? Or was it some desolate place with no one around? Or, the headquarters of the Heavenly Union sect? The imperial capital of the great Yan Empire was the territory of the great Yan Emperor. Prince Lian and the great Yan Emperor had a grudge against each other for killing his mother. Moreover, he had caused a huge commotion in the Blood Flame and Raging Flame divine nations. Otherwise, the great Yan Emperor would definitely find a reason to punish him after seeing his wild ambitions. As for hiding in a desolate place, Ji Tianqing did not think it was likely. Prince Lian was used to being high and mighty. He lived like a prince and could command many experts at any time. If he hid in a desolate place, he would be safe. However, he and his subordinates would be cut off from the outside world. Moreover, the conditions in a desolate place were harsh and not suitable for recuperation. After thinking about it, the most likely place Prince Lian could hide was the headquarters of the Heavenly Union sect. Prince Lian's biggest backer is the Heavenly Union sect. He'll only be safe and convenient if he hides in the headquarters. Moreover, he might be hoping that I won't dare to look for him because of the Heavenly Union sect's power and prestige. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself as a mocking sneer appeared on his face. Prince Lian, oh, Prince Lian, it's useless even if you hide in the great Yan Emperor's palace, let alone the headquarters of the Heavenly Union sect. If I want to kill you, you won't be able to escape death no matter where you run to. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing decided to leave the Raging Flame Divine Nation as soon as possible. Flying was too slow. He planned to look for a teleportation divine formation after entering Rockwych County. It should save him a lot of time. After entering the Great Yan Empire, he would head to the headquarters of the Heavenly Union sect. At that time, he would try to kill Prince Lian and end this grudge. He would try his best not to implicate the innocent. If the Heavenly Union sect was tactful and did not interfere in his grudge with Prince Lian, they would be spared. If the Heavenly Union sect interfered, protected Prince Lian, or even attacked him with all their might, he did not mind destroying the Heavenly Union sect. The previous emperor was the grandfather of Great Yan's emperor. He was known as the Patriarch. The Great Yan Empire had also recruited many talented people, crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It was unknown how many top-notch high-ranked divine lords they had recruited. Even the young emperor of Great Yan was a 9th-stage higher divine lord. His strength was slightly stronger than Prince Lian's. At this moment, the capital of Great Yan, which covered an area of 1,000 miles, was shrouded in the darkness of the night. Great Yan's imperial capital was extremely prosperous. More than 15 million Protoss citizens lived there. Even though it was late at night, the imperial capital was still brightly lit and the streets were bustling with people. Therefore, Great Yan's capital was known as the Nightless City. This was also a place of pilgrimage for the surrounding 18 divine nations. It was the highest-level divine Dao Holy Land. At this moment, the imperial palace in Great Yan's capital was still as dazzling and magnificent as ever. Deep in the palace, in a grand and luxurious study, a young man dressed in a 5-clawed golden dragon robe and a crown with 9 dragons on his head was sitting behind a divine jade desk. He was resting with his eyes closed. This tall and burly young man was dark red in color. He had the majestic and domineering air of a king. He was the current leader of the Yan family. He was Yan Yongning, the current emperor of the Great Yan Empire. Hundreds of memorials and jade slips were piled into a small mountain on the desk in front of him. Countless affairs of the empire were waiting for him to deal with. It looked like he was tired, so he closed his eyes and rested for a while. However, in truth, he was a ninth-stage divine lord. He would not have any problems even if he did not eat, drink, or rest for 100 years. At this moment, he was listening to a black-robed man's report. The black-robed middle-aged man was shrouded in black mist. His face could not be seen clearly, and he seemed exceptionally mysterious. Moreover, his strength was also at the ninth-stage divine lord realm. His foundation was even stronger than Great Yan's emperor. This was the governor of Black Flame. He was also one of Great Yan's emperor's most trusted aides. After all, Black Flame was an intelligence organization of Great Yan's imperial family. It was responsible for investigating and monitoring the movements of the 18 divine nations. The Black Flame governor bowed respectfully and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, I've sent people to check repeatedly. The news from the Blood Flame Divine Nations and Raging Flame Divine Nations is indeed true. The foreign youth named Tianqing went all the way south from the Blood Flame Divine Nation. He was unstoppable and created miracles time and time again. His battle record is very exaggerated. Now, that person has left Raging Flame Capital and is rushing toward the Empire's border. He should be entering the Empire soon." The Black Flame governor had reported a lot of information before. These few sentences were just a summary. The emperor was silent for a moment. He did not comment. Instead, he asked, "What about Old Eighth? He was defeated so miserably. He should be running back like a stray dog, right?" The Old Eighth he was referring to was the 8th prince, who was the current Prince Lien. The Black Flame governor said calmly, "Prince Lien left Raging Flame Capital on the night of the final battle and returned to the Empire. Just last night, he returned to the Empire with his followers and confidants. According to the informants at the border, Prince Lien did not seem to be returning to the imperial capital. He seemed to be heading toward the heavenly sect." The emperor sneered and said, "He. No matter how big the imperial capital is, it is not his home. Although the 8th prince's mansion is still there, it is covered with dust and has been abandoned. How can he come back? Now, other than the Heavenly Union sect, where else can he go?" The Black Flame governor did not comment on this. He just asked calmly, "Your Majesty, please make a decision. How should we deal with Prince Lien?" The emperor leaned back on the divine jade chair and sneered mockingly. "Old Eighth has been defeated so miserably. Let him hide and recuperate for a few years. He is still too inexperienced. He thinks he is doing things secretly, but how can he escape from my eyes? When I sent him to the Blood Flame Divine Nation, I guessed that he was harboring evil intentions and plotting revenge. When he was gathering forces in the various divine nations and building a team, I pretended not to know and turned a blind eye. After all, those forces are not strong enough to threaten me. I just ascended the throne not long ago, and I just killed Old Fourth and their mother. If I punish Old Eighth, the people will scold me for being heartless and cold-blooded. I didn't expect that a young man from another race called Tianqing would suddenly appear and have a conflict with Old Eighth. Moreover, that kid is so brave that he actually destroyed Old Eighth's force and defeated him so miserably. Speaking of which, I have to thank that kid for eliminating Old Eighth's force for me." The Black Flame governor understood the emperor's meaning and asked again, "How do you plan to deal with that kid, Your Majesty?" The emperor frowned and said in a deep voice, "I don't want to deal with him, but the Great Yan Empire does not welcome him." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 3180. Ji Tianqing knew that it was unlikely that Grand Prince Lien was still in Yinwu Pass. However, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack for him to kill Grand Prince Lien now. Under such circumstances, he had to try as long as there was a slight possibility. Otherwise, he would regret it if he missed the best chance to kill Grand Prince Lien. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing flew across the night sky, and soon, he had traveled 500 miles and arrived at the Cloud Mist Pass. There was a deep canyon in front of him. It was filled with towering trees and thick clouds. On both sides of the mountain were 3,000 feet tall, extremely steep and dangerous. However, the two mountains were not far from each other. They were only about 100 miles apart. The soldiers of the Great Yan Empire had built a floating city at the peak of the two mountains to connect the two mountains. The floating city floating in the sea of clouds was only 100 miles in radius, but it looked very prosperous with many palaces and tall buildings. There were also flat open spaces on both sides of the mountains. Barracks and armory were built. 180,000 border soldiers were stationed in the barracks and the floating city. Even though it was late at night, there were many soldiers patrolling around the floating city. The city was still lit. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing used his invisibility divine ability and flew silently toward the floating city. What surprised him was that the floating city and the two barracks were protected by Supreme Monarch level divine arrays. The defense divine array of the floating city was fully activated. It shone brilliantly in the night sky. He had to break the divine array if he wanted to enter the floating city. Therefore, he did not waste any time. He dodged a few patrolling soldiers and started to break the divine array. It was not difficult for him to break the Supreme Monarch level divine array, but it would take a long time. Moreover, he had to keep using his divine power while breaking the divine array. It was difficult to hide. Half an hour passed. Ji Tianqing finally broke the divine array and tore a hole in the five-colored light shield. He had just passed through the hole and entered the floating city when he saw a large number of soldiers gathered in the open space in front of him. There were more than 1,000 elite black-armored soldiers led by 4 low-ranked divine lords. They were in a neat formation and were waiting for him. At the front of the battle formation, there were 3 powerhouses who were also staring at him coldly. He was an upper divine monarch in armor and his strength had reached the 7th heaven realm. He looked like a general guarding the cloud mist pass. The other 2 high-level monarchs were dressed in luxurious robes and they exuded a dignified and noble aura. Their strength had also reached the 8th degree realm. It was obvious that Ji Tianqing had exposed himself and was discovered by the other party. Could it be that another battle was about to break out? Ji Tianqing thought to himself. He was not afraid of fighting. If they really fought, he could destroy the entire Yunwu Pass within 2 hours, wiping out hundreds of thousands of soldiers. However, was there a need to start a massacre? If he really killed the 180,000 soldiers of Cloud Mist Pass, the Emperor of Great Yan would definitely fly into a rage and order everyone to surround and annihilate him. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing decided not to make a move first and act according to the circumstances. At this moment, the 2 powerhouses in luxurious robes in the lead spoke first. An old man with white hair and a beard looked at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly and said, "If I'm not mistaken, you're Tianqing, aren't you?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked, "The 2 of you don't look like the guards of Cloud Mist Pass. You look more like you're waiting for me here." The other middle-aged man nodded and said with a faint smile, "You're smart to be able to guess this. To tell you the truth, Elder Yuan and I are His Majesty's Imperial envoys. We were ordered to wait for you here and pass on a message to you." Realization dawned on Ji Tianqing. At the same time, more questions appeared in his mind. Great Yan's Imperial envoys? They've been waiting for me here. He frowned. He had a bad feeling about this. After all, he had caused an earth-shattering battle in the Blood Flame and Raging Flame Divine nations. He had even killed the Blood Flame Divine Sovereign. The Great Yan Emperor had eyes and ears all over the divine nations. He must have known the truth long ago. However, the Great Yan Emperor had never asked about it and pretended not to know anything. Now that he had come to Cloud Mist Pass, the Great Yan Emperor had sent someone to wait for him here and pass on a message. No matter how he looked at it, this was not good news. As expected. The white-bearded old man stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a dignified tone, "Tianqing, the matter between you and Prince Lien is a personal grudge. You caused such a huge commotion in the blood flame and raging flame divine nations. It's also a matter between you and the two divine nations. His Majesty is well aware of all this, but he didn't interfere. This is because His Majesty is a benevolent and righteous ruler. He only protects the citizens of the great Yan Empire and won't interfere with the internal affairs of the other divine nations. However, it's impossible for you to break into Cloud Mist Pass and even enter the great Yan Empire tonight. His Majesty has said that you're not welcome in the great Yan Empire. Please leave. The middle-aged man said in a dignified tone, Tianqing, no matter how powerful you are or how bloodthirsty you are, His Majesty can ignore you as long as you don't threaten the great Yan Empire. However, if you enter the great Yan Empire, you'll endanger the safety of the citizens. This is not allowed. I hope you know your place. Don't step into the great Yan Empire and don't challenge His Majesty's authority. Otherwise, you'll suffer His Majesty's wrath and face the encirclement of the entire empire. You'd better think about it carefully. The two imperial envoys' tone was unfriendly and their expressions were arrogant. However, they were here on behalf of the great Yan Emperor. Naturally, they had to be imposing and not tarnish the great Yan Emperor's reputation. Moreover, they did not say anything overboard. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He had expected this outcome. He sneered and said, in that case, please tell the great Yan Emperor that I won't harm the citizens of the great Yan Empire. I'm only here to hunt down Prince Lien. I'm getting rid of an evil for the people and also helping the great Yan Emperor resolve one of his worries. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the two imperial envoys and the divine general changed. They looked furious. Bastard! How dare you criticize His Majesty? The golden-armored divine general shouted angrily. The two imperial envoys' expressions darkened as well. They said coldly, Brat, do you know the consequences of slandering His Majesty? Tianqing, no matter how you quibble or plead for mercy, His Majesty's decree cannot be changed. If you know what's good for you, turn around and leave now. Don't even think about taking half a step into the great Yan Empire. Ji Tianqing's smile became even more mocking. He nodded and said, it seems like you know about the grudge between Prince Lien and Great Yan's Emperor. Otherwise, why would you be so angry? In that case, I only have one question. If you give me an answer, I'll turn around and leave. The two imperial envoys fell silent. After a brief discussion, the white-bearded old man said, ask whatever you want. However, whether we're willing to answer is our business. Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He asked directly, is Prince Lien at Yunwu Pass? Did he pass by this place? Which direction did he go? This question shouldn't make things difficult for you. In fact, you should be happy to hear it. The fastest mobile version of the website. Chapter 3181. The Rock Witch Commandery Princess thought that Ji Tianqing had other intentions. It was either to rob or to kill. After all, this person was known as the Killing God. The Rock Witch Commandery Princess naturally thought that it was related to killing. Who knew that Ji Tianqing's request would be so simple? He just wanted to borrow the teleportation formation. Hearing this, the Rock Magus Infanta relaxed. Her heart that had been hanging in the air also calmed down. He let out a long sigh and a smile appeared on his face. He said politely, Ahaha. So it's about this. I thought it was something else. Mr. Tianqing, don't worry. How can I not help you with such a small matter? Do you want to use it now or when? How about this, since it's your first time in the Rock Witch Commandery, as the host, I have to be a good host and treat you well. The last sentence was, of course, a meaningless courtesy. The Rock Witch Commandery Princess's real thoughts were that she wanted this killing god to leave quickly. How could she waste any more time with him? However, she could not show it. She was very cautious in front of Ji Tianqing. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing's reply allowed him to heave a sigh of relief. Don't waste any more time. I will leave now. The Rock Witch Commandery Princess finally confirmed that Ji Tianqing only had this request and no other purpose. She was completely relieved. Without hesitation, she opened the door of the secret chamber and led Ji Tianqing out of the secret chamber. Mr. Tianqing, please follow me. Then, the two of them passed through the dark tunnel and entered the center of the underground palace. They entered a spacious hall. There were 8 lower divine lords guarding the hall. They were all cultivating in their own secret chambers. Once someone approached the hall, the 8 divine lords would be awakened. Although they did not know Ji Tianqing, they saw the Rock Witch Commandery Princess leading Ji Tianqing into the hall. Then, they stayed in the secret chamber and did not move. The dark hall was silent. There was only a large formation on the ground in the middle of the hall. The Rock Witch Commandery Princess walked to the center of the formation and personally cast a spell to activate the formation. Soon, a white door of light that was more than 10 feet tall appeared in the middle of the formation. Rock Magus Countess finished casting the spell and bowed to Ji Tianqing. She said, Young Master Tianqing, the teleportation divine formation has been opened. It can reach Shangyu City at the border. Ji Tianqing nodded. He stepped into the formation and walked into the teleportation gate. Shwa! With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared into the light gate. Seeing that he had really left, the Rock Witch Infanta's tense nerves relaxed. She let out a long breath and wiped the cold on her forehead. Phew! Fortunately, this death god only wanted to borrow the teleportation array and had no other intentions. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. After muttering to himself, he began to close the teleportation divine array. When he left the hall, he muttered to himself, although this god of death's strength is unfathomable, his nature doesn't seem to be as cruel as the rumors say. The distance between Rock Witch County City and Willow City was tens of millions of miles. With Ji Tianqing's speed, he would need to fly for at least 3 days to arrive. However, using the teleportation divine array, he only needed a breath's time to arrive. When he appeared in Willow City, he was standing in an underground palace. There were several hundred guards standing guard around the palace, and there was even a lower divine lord overseeing it. When everyone saw Ji Tianqing suddenly appear, they were all stunned for a moment. Then, they surrounded him. Vigilantly, they gripped their swords and blades, staring at Ji Tianqing fiercely. Once Ji Tianqing showed hostility and killing intent, they would not hesitate to attack. If Ji Tianqing showed any signs of cowardice, fear, or guilt, they would surround him and capture him. However, Ji Tianqing ignored them and left the underground palace expressionlessly. He used the teleportation technique and left Willow City in a flash. He continued to fly towards the south. The hundreds of guards in the underground palace all looked at each other in dismay, their hearts filled with doubt. A guard captain plucked up his courage and asked the low-level divine lord, Commander, who was that foreign race kid? Why didn't we stop him and interrogate him? The low-level divine lord glared at him and shouted coldly, Are you out of your mind? That person's strength is unfathomable. Do you want to die? Moreover, he came from Rock Witch County City. He must have been approved by the princess. Why do we need to interrogate him? The guard captain shrunk his neck and quickly apologized. Not long after, Ji Tianqing left Rock Witch County City. 3 days later, he arrived at Kushingnan County City. This time, he did the same thing. He quietly broke into the princess's mansion to borrow the teleportation divine array. To his surprise, the princess was not in the mansion. He did not know where she had gone to do some errands. The person with the highest status in the princess's mansion was the princess's son. He was a frivolous and dissolute playboy. Ji Tianqing used a little trick to capture the princess's son. He was so scared that he almost wet his pants. He did not even say his name, but the princess's son was so scared that he begged for mercy and agreed to open the teleportation divine array. This made things even simpler. Ji Tianqing carried the princess's son and entered the underground hall. Chapter 3182. Ji Tianqing knew that it was unlikely that Grand Prince Lian was still in Yinwu Pass. However, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack for him to kill Grand Prince Lian now. Under such circumstances, he had to try as long as there was a slight possibility. Otherwise, he would regret it if he missed the best chance to kill Grand Prince Lian. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing flew across the night sky, and soon, he had traveled 500 miles and arrived at the Cloud Mist Pass. There was a deep canyon in front of him. It was filled with towering trees and thick clouds. On both sides of the mountain were 3,000 feet tall, extremely steep and dangerous. However, the two mountains were not far apart, only about 100 miles apart. The soldiers of the Great Yan Empire had built a floating city at the peak of the two mountains to connect the two mountains. The floating city floating in the sea of clouds was only 100 miles in radius, but it looked very prosperous with many palaces and tall buildings. There were also flat open spaces on both sides of the mountains. Barracks and armory were built. 180,000 border soldiers were stationed in the barracks and the floating city. Although it was late at night, there were still many soldiers patrolling around the floating city. The city was still lit. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing used his invisibility divine ability and flew toward the floating city silently. What surprised him was that the floating city and the two barracks were protected by Supreme Monarch level divine arrays. The defense divine array of the floating city was fully activated. It shone with dazzling divine light in the night sky. He had to break the divine array if he wanted to enter the floating city. Therefore, he did not waste any time. He dodged a few patrolling soldiers and started to break the divine array. It was not difficult for him to break the Supreme Monarch level divine array, but it would take him a long time. Moreover, he had to keep using his divine power while breaking the divine array. It was difficult to hide. Half an hour passed. Ji Tianqing finally broke the divine array and tore a hole in the five-colored light shield. He had just passed through the hole and entered the floating city when he saw a large number of soldiers gathered in the open space in front of him. There were thousands of elite black-armored soldiers led by 4 low-ranked divine lords. They were in a neat formation and were waiting for him. There were 3 powerhouses at the front of the battle formation. They were also staring at him coldly. One of them was a high-ranked divine lord in armor. His strength was at the 7th heaven realm. He looked like a general guarding Yinwu Pass. The other 2 high-ranked divine lords were dressed in luxurious robes. They exuded a dignified and noble aura. Their strength was at the 8th heaven realm. It was obvious that Ji Tianqing had exposed himself and was discovered by the enemy. Was he going to have to fight another battle? Ji Tianqing thought to himself. He wasn't afraid of fighting. If a fight really broke out, he could destroy the entire Yinwu Pass within 2 hours, wiping out hundreds of thousands of soldiers. However, was there a need to kill them all? If he really killed the 180,000 soldiers of Cloud Mist Pass, the Great Yan Emperor would definitely fly into a rage and order all forces to surround and annihilate him. Thinking of this, Ji Tianqing decided not to make a move first and act according to the circumstances. At this moment, the 2 powerhouses in luxurious robes in the lead spoke first. A white-haired old man from the God clan looked at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly and said, "If I'm not mistaken, you're Tianqing, aren't you?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and asked, "The 2 of you don't look like the guards of Yinwu Pass. Are you waiting for me here?" The other middle-aged man nodded and said with a smile, "You're smart to be able to guess this. To tell you the truth, Elder Yuan and I are His Majesty's Imperial envoys. We were ordered to wait for you here and pass on a message to you." Realization dawned on Ji Tianqing. At the same time, more questions appeared in his mind. Great Yan's emperor's imperial envoys? They're waiting for me here. He frowned. He had a bad feeling about this. After all, he had caused an earth-shattering battle in the Blood Flame and Raging Flame Divine nations. He had even killed the Blood Flame Divine Sovereign. The Great Yan Emperor had eyes and ears all over the Divine nations. He must have known the truth long ago. However, the Great Yan Emperor had never asked about it and pretended not to know anything. Now that he had come to Yunwu Pass, the Great Yan Emperor had sent someone to wait for him here and pass on a message. No matter how he looked at it, this was not good news. As expected. The white-haired old man stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a dignified tone, "Tianqing, the matter between you and Prince Lian is a personal grudge. You caused such a huge commotion in the Blood Flame and Raging Flame Divine nations. It's also a matter between you and the two Divine nations. His Majesty is well aware of all this, but he didn't interfere. His Majesty is a benevolent and righteous ruler. He only protects the citizens of the Great Yan Empire and won't interfere with the internal affairs of the other Divine nations. However, it's impossible for you to break into Yunwu Pass and even step into the Great Yan Empire tonight. His Majesty has said that you're not welcome in the Great Yan Empire. Please leave." The middle-aged man said in a dignified tone, "Tianqing, no matter how powerful you are or how bloodthirsty you are, His Majesty can ignore you as long as you don't threaten the Great Yan Empire. However, if you enter the Great Yan Empire, you'll endanger the safety of the citizens. This is unacceptable. I hope you know your place. Don't step into the Great Yan Empire and don't challenge His Majesty's authority. Otherwise, you'll have to bear His Majesty's wrath and face the encirclement of the entire empire. You'd better think about it carefully." Although the two imperial envoys' tone was unfriendly and their expressions were arrogant, they were the representatives of the Great Yan Empire. However, since they were here on behalf of Great Yan's emperor, they had to be imposing. They could not tarnish the emperor's reputation. Moreover, they did not say anything overboard. Ji Tianqing was not angry. He had expected this outcome. He sneered and said, "Please tell the Great Yan Emperor that I won't harm the citizens of the Great Yan Empire. I'm only here to hunt down Prince Lian. This is to get rid of an evil for the people and also to help the Great Yan Emperor resolve one of his worries." Upon hearing this, the expressions of the two imperial envoys and the divine general changed. Anger could be seen on their faces. B*****. How dare you criticize His Majesty? The golden-armored divine general scolded angrily. The two imperial envoys' expressions darkened as well. They said coldly, "Brat, do you know the consequences of slandering His Majesty? Tianqing, no matter how you quibble or plead for mercy, His Majesty's decree cannot be changed. If you know what's good for you, turn around and leave now. Don't even think about taking half a step into the Great Yan Empire." Ji Tianqing's smile became even more derisive. He nodded and said, "It seems like you know about the grudge between Prince Lian and the Great Yan Emperor. Otherwise, why would you be so angry? In that case, I'll only ask one thing. If you give me an answer, I'll turn around and leave." The two imperial envoys fell silent. After a brief discussion, the white-bearded old man said, "Ask whatever you want. However, whether we're willing to answer is our business." Ji Tianqing did not beat around the bush. He asked directly, "Is Prince Lian at Cloud Mist Pass? Did he pass by this place? Which direction did he go?" This question shouldn't make things difficult for you. In fact, you should be happy to hear it. Chapter 3183. Ji Tianqing spoke the truth. But to the two imperial envoys and the general, they felt that his words were sarcastic and full of sarcasm. The three of them didn't look too good. They muttered to themselves for a while and secretly communicated with each other. The white-bearded old man sighed, "His Majesty is indeed wise. He guessed that this guy would chase after Grand Prince Lien and boldly barge into Yinwu Pass. The middle-aged man frowned and said in a displeased tone, "This guy is very arrogant. He doesn't even respect His Majesty. If it weren't for His Majesty's orders, I would have taken action and extinguished his arrogance." The white-bearded old man said with a bitter smile, "Don't be angry. If you really took action and taught him a lesson, you would have been defeated in a few moves. Don't forget, this guy is very strong. Even a grand prince has been defeated by him. Moreover, this guy is ruthless and bloodthirsty. He doesn't care about our identities." The middle-aged man's face darkened and he didn't say anything else. The golden-armored general asked, "Imperial envoys, what do we do now? Should we tell him the truth?" The middle-aged man didn't make the decision on his own. He looked at the white-bearded old man and asked for his opinion. The white-bearded old man thought for a while and nodded. He transmitted, "It's better to avoid trouble. The grudge between this guy and Grand Prince Lien has nothing to do with us. There's no need to hide it for Grand Prince Lien. What's more, what he said wasn't wrong. If he can find Grand Prince Lien and kill him, it'll be considered a meritorious service. However, we can only keep these things in our hearts. We can't criticize him." The middle-aged man and the golden-armored general both nodded in agreement. The white-bearded old man looked at Ji Tianqing and said, "Tianqing, I'm an imperial envoy appointed by His Majesty. I'm only here to carry out His Majesty's orders. I've already passed on the message to you. As for Grand Prince Lien's whereabouts and direction, I have no obligation to tell you. However, I see that you're in high spirits and dignified. You're not as ruthless and bloodthirsty as the rumors say. Therefore, I'm not telling you as an imperial envoy. I'm telling you as an individual. Grand Prince Lien isn't in Yinwu Pass. He hasn't even been here. However, he entered the Empire's territory a day ago. As for which direction he went, this old man has no idea." After saying this, the white-bearded old man quietly looked at Ji Tianqing without saying another word. He had already said what he needed to say. Moreover, he had done Ji Tianqing a favor in his personal capacity. If Ji Tianqing continued to pester him, it would be Ji Tianqing being unreasonable. In fact, Ji Tianqing was well aware of this. Not only did he know that the white-bearded old man had done him a favor, he also knew why the old man had done so. As it turned out, Great Yan's emperor's attitude toward him was complicated and contradictory. They wanted to use him to get rid of Grand Prince Lien, but they were also afraid that he would cause trouble in the Great Yan Empire. If he could kill Grand Prince Lien, not only would he have gotten rid of a thorn in the Great Yan Emperor's side, but the Great Yan Emperor would also not have to pay any price, let alone bear the infamy. However, the Great Yan Emperor was also worried that if he went on a killing spree in the Great Yan Empire, he would incur the wrath of the people. At that time, no matter how unwilling the Great Yan Emperor was, he would have to send troops to kill Ji Tianqing to restore the prestige of the nation. He had to maintain his glorious image of loving the people like his own children to secure his position as emperor. Otherwise, he would be impeached and criticized by the diehards. However, the Great Yan Emperor knew that no matter how many elite troops he sent, they might not be able to kill Ji Tianqing. Instead, they would suffer heavy losses and sink deeper into the abyss. Once Ji Tianqing and the Great Yan Empire had a blood feud, there would be no way to salvage the situation. Even if the Great Yan Empire managed to kill Ji Tianqing in the end, they would suffer heavy losses. All in all, the Great Yan Emperor's thoughts were complicated. As an imperial envoy and a trusted aide of the Great Yan Emperor, the white-bearded old man naturally understood the emperor's thoughts. However, he could not say it out loud lest he hurt the emperor's reputation and reputation. Therefore, he very cleverly chose to tell Ji Tianqing in his personal capacity. The twists and turns in this matter were not something an ordinary person could figure out. Ji Tianqing raised an eyebrow. He cupped his fists at the white-bearded old man and said, "Thank you for telling me. In that case, I'll take my leave now." After he finished speaking, he turned around and left cloud mist pass through the gap in the divine formation. Everyone stood where they were and watched Ji Tianqing's figure disappear into the night sky. They were silent for a while. The golden-armored general waved his hand, signaling the 1,000 elite soldiers to retreat. Only the white-bearded old man, the middle-aged man, and the golden-armored general were left. The three of them began to discuss. The middle-aged man frowned in confusion and muttered, "That kid's way of doing things is indeed different from what the rumors say. He doesn't seem like a vicious and bloodthirsty executioner who will stop at nothing." The white-bearded old man stroked his beard and nodded. Putting aside the grudge between him and Prince Lien, he's a peak-stage divine lord at such a young age. He can be said to be a once-in-a-lifetime genius. Such peerless geniuses are usually very proud. How can he be a villain who won't stop at nothing? The golden-armored general breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "I originally thought that this person would be very difficult to deal with and that there would most likely be a fierce battle tonight. I didn't expect that he would be sent away so easily. Elder Yuan is really courageous to actually be able to intimidate him." The white-bearded old man stroked his beard and laughed self-deprecatingly. "General Wang, don't make fun of this old man. How can this old man have the ability to intimidate the famous killing god? It's His Majesty's prestige that killing god is afraid of and does not dare to offend. Furthermore, killing god is not a reckless person. Of course, he knows how to weigh the pros and cons. He only has a grudge with Prince Lien. He has no grudge with us. Why should he make things difficult for us and become enemies with the Empire?" The golden-armored general nodded repeatedly in agreement. The middle-aged man thought for a while and asked again, "Elder Yuan, is that kid really willing to leave just like that? Why did he believe your words without any doubt?" The white-bearded old man chuckled and said, "Firstly, this old man has no need to lie to him. There is no need for me to cover for Prince Lien. He is well aware of it. Secondly, do you think he didn't investigate? When we were negotiating, he had already secretly released his divine sense and searched the floating city several times. He didn't find any trace of Prince Lien, nor did he detect the aura left behind by Prince Lien. Of course, he has to believe this old man." The golden-armored general was even more impressed and flattered the white-bearded old man a few more times. The middle-aged man nodded slightly and thought for a while before continuing to ask, "Then in Elder Yuan's opinion, where will that kid go after leaving Yunwu Pass? Will he really be intimidated and not step into the Empire's territory?" The white-bearded old man shook his head again and chuckled. "Of course not. He is arrogant and lawless. How can he be intimidated by a few words from us? If he doesn't step into the Empire's territory, how will he hunt down Prince Lien? This is something that His Majesty has long anticipated." Chapter 3184. As it turned out, the white-bearded old man was a sly old fox. His speculation about Ji Tianqing was spot on. On the surface, it seemed like Ji Tianqing had been intercepted as soon as he entered the floating city. However, in truth, when he was negotiating with the two imperial envoys, he had secretly scouted the entire floating city. The white-bearded old man did not lie to him. Prince Lien was indeed not in the floating city and had not been to Cloud Mist Pass. That was why Ji Tianqing had left without wasting any time. After leaving Cloud Mist Pass, he did not return to the Raging Flame Divine Nation. Instead, he stepped into the Great Yan Empire's territory. However, he went around Cloud Mist Pass, crossed a desolate mountain range, and entered Great Yan's territory. As for the direction of flight, it was, of course, southeast. His next destination was Thousand Sun Lake in Thousand Sun County. That was where the Heavenly Union Sect's headquarters was located. Ji Tianqing had expected Prince Lien to hide in the Heavenly Union Sect since he did not dare to return to the imperial capital. Currently, Prince Lien had not passed through Cloud Mist Pass and had fled to the Great Yan Empire. He had not come into contact with the Great Yan Emperor's men at all. This proved that Prince Lien was not only guarding against Ji Tianqing, but he was also guarding against the Great Yan Emperor's attacks. He. No matter how cunning and cautious you are, you still have to hide from the Heavenly Union sect. No matter what, the Heavenly Union sect's headquarters is at Thousand Sun Lake. There's no way you can run away. As Ji Tianqing hurried along, he calculated in his mind and sneered playfully. At this moment, Lin Xue's voice rang in his mind. "Brat, why aren't you fighting with the people of the Great Yan Empire?" Lin Xue left emissary Jin, and the others were recuperating and cultivating in the divine ship. On the second day of the battle on Sky Dragon Mountain, they eagerly asked Ji Tianqing about the results of the battle. Ji Tianqing told them the truth. They were shocked beyond words. After a long time of excitement, Lin Xue and the others finally calmed down. Then, Lin Xue began to complain about Ji Tianqing. Why did he kill the 13,000 soldiers alone and not give her a chance to fight? Although Lord Blood Illusion left emissary Jin, and the others did not say anything, they felt it was a pity. They had only participated in the initial battle, but had not been able to accompany Ji Tianqing to the end. As a result, news of that earth-shattering battle spread throughout the divine nations and Ji Tianqing's name spread throughout the world. On the other hand, they were unknown and had missed the opportunity to make a name for themselves. Regarding this, Ji Tianqing's reaction was very calm. He consoled them, the battle that day was too intense. If you had participated in the battle, I would have had to divert my attention to protect you. Otherwise, you could have easily died. It doesn't matter if you miss this opportunity. Don't worry, there will be more opportunities to become famous in the future. With regards to his words of comfort, Lin Xue, Sir God Blood Illusion and the others did not know whether to be happy or depressed. Fortunately, Lin Xue only grumbled a little and did not continue to pester him. In the next 10 days, Ji Tianqing had been hurrying on with his journey. Everyone else was also cultivating in seclusion in the divine warship. Tonight, Lin Xue was truly bored out of her wits. That was why she took the initiative to send a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing frowned and said unhappily, "You're a savage and bloodthirsty demoness. I've only killed tens of thousands of people 10 days ago, and I've already been crowned as the god of slaughter and the butcher. If I clash with the Great Yan Empire again tonight and kill all the defenders of Cloud Mist Pass, I'll really become an executioner." Lin Xue said disapprovingly, "You're being indecisive. If I were you and had strength comparable to a godly king, I'd crush my way through. I'd kill all those who refuse to obey me. Even if I offend the entire Great Yan Empire, I wouldn't care. I'd crush them all the same. If I'm angered, I'll kill the Great Yan Emperor and slaughter the entire imperial city." Ji Tianqing could not help but roll his eyes. He said snappily, "That's why you're called the Bloody Blade Demoness, the Bloody Blade Demoness, the Bloodthirsty Demoness. You asked for it." Lin Xue was still unconcerned. She said with conviction, "Haven't you heard of this saying? A general's success is built on the bones of 10,000. Since ancient times, which peerless expert and hero didn't step on piles of corpses and become famous with shocking battle records?" Ji Tianqing patiently lectured her. He said, "Even if that's the case, you can't kill the innocent. You have to kill meaningful opponents and experts to build your reputation. If I waste my time and slaughter the defenders of Cloud Mist Pass, I'll only make Prince Lien laugh his head off." Lin Xue thought for a moment before she understood the stakes. She asked, "You're saying that Prince Lien is not only afraid of you, but he's also wary of the Great Yan Emperor? You're in a tripartite relationship now. The Great Yan Emperor wants to use you to get rid of Prince Lien, but he can't let you damage the dignity of the empire. Prince Lien wants you to become enemies with the Great Yan Emperor and watch from the sidelines while the tigers fight. He even wants to reap the benefits." Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, you're not too stupid. You can still be saved. Go to hell. Lin Shui cursed. She said fiercely, so, you're going to the Heavenly Union Sect's headquarters now and take advantage of the situation to kill Prince Lien? Ji Tianqing nodded. He asked, what else can I do? Prince Lien is running for his life in a hurry. He didn't have time to come up with a plan. This is the best opportunity to get rid of him. If I waste my time and give him a chance to catch his breath, I'm afraid there'll be more variables. Lin Shui said disdainfully, aren't you just wasting your time if you travel alone? Ji Tianqing was speechless. He could only bring out the divine worship. Swoosh! There was a flash of divine light. The pitch-black divine worship flew into the night sky and quickly returned to its original size of 10,000 feet. Ji Tianqing entered the divine worship in a flash. He walked into the control room and saw Lin Shui activating the formation. She was going to operate the divine formation herself. Hence, he could not help but ask, why are you alone? Where are left emissary Jin and right emissary Blood Dragon? Aren't you going to let them pilot the divine worship? Lin Shui glanced at him and said, they're still recovering and cultivating. There's no need for them to show their faces. I'll personally pilot the divine worship for you. It's much faster than them. This is the only way to save you time. Do you understand? Ji Tianqing spread his hands and said, since you're so considerate, what else can I say? Lin Shui glared at him again and said unhappily, then go and rest. I'll be enough to pilot the divine worship alone. I'll inform you when something happens. Ji Tianqing was a little worried. He asked, do you know where the headquarters of the Heavenly Union Sect is? Lin Shui was stunned. Then, she snorted and said, of course I don't know. Then why don't you tell me? Ji Tianqing was speechless again. Why are you so arrogant if you don't know? Thousand Sun County, Thousand Sun Lake. Just fly southeast. It'll take you at least 20 days to reach there. I know. You can go now. Lin Shui urged impatiently. Ji Tianqing did not waste any more words with her. He got up and left the control room. When he returned to the secret room, he took out the Jiutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda and entered the distorted spacetime to cultivate. Chapter 3185. The dim light distorted in the sky. Ji Tianqing stood under the majestic blood flame sacred tree with a gratified smile on his face. It has indeed grown taller, and its divine power aura has also become stronger. It was just as he had expected. Previously, he had fought a decisive battle with 13,000 soldiers on Celestial Dragon Mountain and then slaughtered his way into the Raging Flame Royal City. After that earth-shattering battle, the Blood Flame Sacred Tree had absorbed a vast amount of divine souls and bloodline power, and it had clearly become much stronger. Not only had the sacred tree grown taller, but its divine light had also become more dazzling. Even the soaring crimson flames had become more turbulent and mighty. At the same time, purple shoots had sprouted from more bare branches. The buds on the tree branches had also gradually grown into leaves. The blood flame sacred tree had gained life, and it was thriving with vitality. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, Zhen Hong, and the others were still cultivating around the sacred tree. The blood flame sacred tree had become stronger, and the benefits they had received had also multiplied. Their strength had improved even faster. Ji Tianqing walked around the sacred tree to check on everyone, Qian Yu, and the black dragon. Seeing that everything was normal, he also sat down cross-legged under the divine tree and began to cultivate in seclusion. The previous battles had also been a test and training for him, and he had benefited greatly from them. Especially the heaven-punishing divine art. He had gained more inspiration and understanding, and he would definitely be able to perfect it. Ji Tianqing began cultivating the heaven-punishing divine art, constantly correcting and perfecting the first stage of the art. As time passed, he continued to absorb the power of the blood flame's sacred tree, and at the same time, he used up large amounts of divine stones and resources. Unknowingly, half a year had passed. The first stage of the heaven-punishing divine art had become even more perfect and wondrous. At the same time, Ji Tianqing's strength had also increased greatly, and he was gradually advancing toward the 9th level of the Divine Lord realm. Ji Tianqing did not stop, and he continued to deduce the second stage of the heaven-punishing divine art. This process was very long, complicated, and tedious. It required tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of deductions and attempts. Ordinary people did not have such comprehension and thinking ability, nor did they have such strong willpower. However, Ji Tianqing did it. Moreover, he was immersed in it and didn't feel bored at all. Time passed quickly, and the distorted space was silent. In the outside world, Lin Shui was driving the godly battleship alone toward the Thousand Sun County. The journey was very boring. In particular, Shui Huan, left emissary Jin, and Blood Dragon were all in seclusion in the secret chamber. She was alone in the driver's seat with no one to talk to. The first 2 days were fine, but after the third day, she felt a little bored. However, she didn't relax, nor did she dare to let her guard down. She continued to rush towards Qianyang County at full speed. She knew the importance of this matter, so how could she dare to neglect it? However, she couldn't help but mutter in her heart, "Why is it so peaceful all the way here? There isn't even a single person to intercept or track me." Even if Great Yan's emperor had a tacit understanding with Tianqing, he could continue to feign ignorance. What about Prince Lian? He must know we're chasing after him. We've already returned to the Great Yan Empire, and this is his territory. Why didn't he send anyone to intercept or harass us? Lin Shui had long been on guard against the Great Yan Emperor and Prince Lian sending people to harass them. However, things were a little strange. It was different from what she had imagined. She couldn't help but feel worried. She thought to herself, could it be that Prince Lian's influence in the Great Yan Empire is weak, unlike in the Blood Flame and Raging Flame divine nations where he can do whatever he wants? That's possible. After all, this is the Great Yan Emperor's territory. The Great Yan Emperor had always been wary of Prince Lian. How could he allow Prince Lian to expand his influence? There's another possibility. Prince Lian hasn't recovered from his injuries yet. He was in a hurry to escape and didn't have time to deploy his troops. However, that doesn't make sense. He only needs to send a transmission jade slip and explain the situation to the Heavenly Sect. The Heavenly Sect is so powerful. They should be able to send a large number of experts to intercept and kill us. Lin Shui could not figure it out no matter how she thought about it. Instead, the more she thought about it, the more confused she became. In a fit of anger, she decided to stop thinking about it. She muttered angrily, "Humph. Figuring out schemes and plans isn't my strong suit. I wonder where Tianqing and Prince Lian come up with so many ideas and schemes. Don't they feel a headache from scheming all day long? Who cares what they think? I'll just sail the ship. If we encounter a powerful enemy, we'll just fight to the death." With that thought in mind, Lin Shui felt refreshed. Her thoughts were clear. Meanwhile, in Tianfeng County that was 15 million miles away from Lin Shui and the others, a dark red divine warship that was 10,000 feet long and shaped like a huge dragon was speeding through the night sky. This was a supreme-grade monarch-grade divine warship. Not only was its defense strong, but its attack power was also powerful. Even its flying speed was astonishing. There were more than 60 people on the divine warship. All of them were elites and experts. These people were Prince Lian's confidants, his most trusted followers, and guards. Naturally, there were also a few of his favorite concubines. At this moment, Prince Lian was sitting in his personal secret chamber. He was waiting patiently for something. After a while, a young man in black armor walked quickly into the secret chamber and bowed to Prince Lien. "Greetings, Your Highness. There's already some progress." Prince Lien raised his eyebrows and said in a dignified tone, "Speak." Lien San didn't dare to talk nonsense. He directly reported, "The informant we planted in Yinwu Pass just sent news." According to the informant's report, on the second night after we entered the Great Yan Empire, an expert sneaked into Yinwu Pass. However, the general and 2 imperial envoys had been waiting for a long time and stopped that expert. I don't know what they talked about, but after some negotiation, they didn't fight. That expert left quietly. After that, our informant asked around and found out that the expert was Tian Xing. Obviously, the informant Prince Lien had planted in Yinwu Pass was of a lower status and didn't participate in the interception that night. However, this news was enough for Prince Lien. He frowned and said in a low voice, "As I expected, that bastard Tian Xing really went to Yinwu Pass. Since they didn't fight and even negotiated, it means that the 2 imperial envoys were happy to see Tian Xing chase after me. They must have told Tian Xing the truth. That's why he left Yunwu Pass. Tian Xing definitely won't give up. He should be rushing toward Qianyang County. He's delusional to chase after and stop me." Lien San comforted him, "Don't worry, Your Highness. We entered the Empire a day earlier than him. Also, we can find a teleportation formation along the way. That brat definitely won't be able to catch up with us." Prince Lien didn't comment. He frowned and asked, "What about Lien Si? Didn't I ask him to send a message to the vice sect master and elders at the headquarters? Why isn't there any news yet?" Lien San comforted him again, "Don't worry, Your Highness. Once the headquarters sends back news, Lien Si will definitely report it immediately." The fastest mobile version of the website. Chapter 3186. Naturally, Prince Lien was not worried that Ji Tianqing would catch up to him. First, his warship was much faster than Lin Shui's monarch grade high-grade divine warship. Second, he could use the teleportation divine formations in the various counties. No one would dare to stop him. However, Ji Tianqing would not dare to do that unless he wanted to make an enemy out of the Great Yan Emperor and declare war on the Great Yan Empire. At this moment, Prince Lien was worried about another problem. Naturally, he would not be caught or intercepted by Ji Tianqing as he fled back to the Unity Heaven sect. However, what would happen after he fled to the Unity Heaven sect? Would he be able to cultivate in seclusion without any worries? Prince Lien was not so sure. He had a big question mark on his mind. The hidden chamber fell silent. Since Prince Lien did not speak, Lien San could only stand quietly. Time passed quietly. About half an hour later, another divines in black armor walked briskly into the hidden chamber. It was Lien Si. He quickly walked up to Prince Lien and bowed respectfully. "Lien Si greets Your Highness." Prince Lien had been waiting for him. When he saw that Lien Si had finally arrived, he hurriedly waved his hand to dismiss him. He asked, "Lien Si, did the headquarters reply?" Lien Si respectfully replied, "Reporting to Your Highness, just a moment ago, this subordinate received a message from the vice sect leader. The vice sect master said that there's been a breakthrough in the Verdant Jade Palace recently. The 50 Faction Alliance has successfully broken through 2 grand formations and arrived at the palace's gates." Everyone was overjoyed. Originally, the sect master had been guarding the Verdant Jade Palace with 18 elders, reverends, and 300 elite disciples. However, after this incident, the dozens of factions were eager to make a move. They secretly mobilized their forces and gathered at the Verdant Jade Palace. This was because once the Verdant Jade Palace's gates were opened, the factions would fight for a spot to enter the palace. Hence, 10 days ago, the sect master mobilized some people and sent them to the Verdant Jade Palace. Among them, there are 2 grand elders, 4 consecrators, and 200 elite disciples. When Prince Lien heard the first half of the message, he was happy and expectant. After all, he was determined to obtain the verdant jade palace. However, when he heard the second half of the story, his expression darkened, and his eyes were filled with worry. He stared at Lien Si with a dignified gaze and asked in a deep voice, "Who is left in the headquarters?" Lien Si was intimidated by the powerful pressure. He lowered his head in fear and replied truthfully, replying to the prince, "The defense of the headquarters is currently very weak." The 3 ladies were traveling at night to meet with young Master Wan, an official's family. Tonight, young Master Wan had set up a banquet and invited all the local talents and beauties. First, domain name, please remember _3, suddenly, the frosty night sky changed from a cold pale white to a golden light, as if a sun that had been sealed for 10,000 years had suddenly broken free from its shackles and leaped into the sky. The coachman, old Huang, who was driving the carriage, suddenly couldn't see anything. In a panic, he hurriedly pulled on the reins. The 2 horses were abruptly reined in by him and reared up. Their 4 big hooves heavily smashed onto the ground with a "pa" sound, abruptly stopping the carriage. Ouch! The 3 girls in the carriage were caught off guard and almost fell out of the carriage because of the sudden stop. Fortunately, the 3 of them were squeezed together. Although the 3 girls' delicate bodies were light, how wide could an oil wall carriage be? Therefore, they didn't roll out of the carriage. If they fell and messed up their hair, it would be fine, but if they fell and hit the ground with their faces, it would ruin their beautiful faces. "Old Huang, what's going on?" Su Yao Yao was a little angry. She covered her face with her hand and blocked the strong light. She lifted the veil, bent over, and stood on the carriage. Bai Su and Qing Ting followed. The 3 of them stood at the front of the carriage and looked up at the sky. As soon as they saw the strange scene in the sky, they were stunned. He saw a huge golden wheel-like object that looked like a heavenly king was hovering in the air. The light that was as bright as the sun was radiating from it. It swayed in the air as though it couldn't support itself. All of a sudden, the golden wheel-like object exploded. The huge shock wave was like ripples that quickly spread in all directions. The driver, old Huang, cried out in surprise. He rolled off the carriage like a lazy donkey and dove into the bottom of the carriage. On the other hand, Su Yaoyao, Bai Su, and Qing Ting couldn't dodge in time, so the golden light passed through their bodies. The 3 beautiful girls swayed a little and fell to the ground. The golden light disappeared and so did the golden wheel in the sky. A few places were set on fire and smoke rose. The night returned to its cold state as the light shone on the 3 beautiful bodies. The night dew was sparkling and translucent. The grass was like a carpet, the pine trees were like a canopy, and the path was silent. The oily wagon stood there, and the 2 horses snorted blankly, as if nothing had happened. Time flew by. 500 years later, the moon was high in the sky and the lanterns were lit. It was a lively time for Qinhuai. Beside the peach leaf ferry, a young man waved a small fan and walked over slowly. Many passers-by on the road would greet him warmly, "Brother Han." He was a member of the Yamen, and people like Yang Han were all recruited by the head of the department. Therefore, to be precise, Yang Han was the head of the department. To be able to become the son-in-law of the head of the department, there should be smoke rising from his ancestors' graves. However, Yang Han was also a smooth and slick character. He was very familiar with the city's fox and rat society in Jiankang City. He was very well informed. He knew the head of the department's precious daughter better than the head of the department himself. How could he agree? Master Li's daughter was called Li Xiu. She was born beautiful, but she didn't behave properly in the imperial examinations. According to the news that Yang Han heard, this Miss Li had several lovers. She even had an abortion for one of her recent lovers, a scholar named Mu Si. Until now, the two of them were still hooking up with each other, and their relationship was unclear. As the saying goes, it's better to marry a prostitute and live a good life than to marry a red apricot over the wall. Yang Han was also an ambitious man. He didn't want to be a scapegoat for that surnamed Mu and be criticized behind his back. Therefore, Yang Han used all his means and didn't hesitate to sully himself. He was unwilling to give in no matter what. However, he didn't know what was wrong with this Master Li's brain. He didn't understand the principle that a forcefully twisted melon won't be sweet. He actually threatened to resign from his job. Yang Han naturally refused to give in. Therefore, he lost his job. These 2 days, when people on the street mentioned the missing Yang Han, many people couldn't help but sigh. They felt sorry for him, but they didn't expect that he would show up this evening. There was a restaurant next to Tao Yi Du. Yang Han walked in, picked a table, and sat down. He raised his voice and said, "Shopkeeper, a bowl of duck blood and vermicelli soup, a tray of crab roe buns, and a jiao of wine." When Miss Du, who was wearing an apron, saw it was Yang Han, she was delighted. Girls love pretty boys. Who didn't love to see a handsome young man? She and her father took care of this shop. Every time Yang Han came, the duck blood and vermicelli soup was full of ingredients. They were even willing to put a spoonful of pepper for him. She immediately agreed in a crisp voice and got busy. Yang Han turned his head and saw Old Fan passing by with a load. He hurriedly shouted, "Hey! Old Fan, come in, come in. Cut me half a tail of mutton and a set of pig's pancreas." Old Fan was a person who carried a load and sold cooked food. Yang Han was familiar with him. When he heard him call, he hurriedly mustered up his courage and entered the shop. He put down the carrying pole and the chopping board on Yang Han's table. He picked up a piece of mutton and began to cut it. As he cut, he smiled and said, "Brother Han, you're looking for a better job. Where are you getting rich now?" Yang Han was waiting for him to say this. He arrogantly glanced around. Seeing that everyone was listening attentively, he smiled reservedly. "Not really, not really. I'm just indebted to our Jiankong Prefecture's magistrate, Master Li, for his appreciation. Now, I'm a small steward in the Li estate." Old Fan was shocked. He exclaimed, "Io! That's amazing. A 7th-ranked official in front of the Prime Minister's door. Brother Han, now that you're a steward in Master Li's estate, I'm afraid your status isn't lower than Master Li's, right?" Yang Han smiled faintly. It wasn't good for him to flatter himself, but he didn't deny it either. Clearly, he tacitly agreed with Old Fan's words. Originally, why else would he be dressed like a flower with a hairpin and a sachet tied to his waist? Why else would he appear in the area he was previously in charge of? He was returning home in silken robes. Southern Song Chronicles 2/33XS/317/317/317/3175553/. Ji Tianqing's confidence and arrogance made them feel even more pressured and worried. Finally, Shang Yinchi could not withstand the pressure and decisively ordered, "All disciples, listen up. Use all your strength to maintain the sect-protecting grand array. Deacons and elders, follow me and control the formation to counterattack. This seat wants to see just how capable that lawless little bastard is." Following his command, the 200 disciples and 800 guards unleashed their god force into the formation to protect the sect. The sect-protecting grand array was replenished by the majestic god force, and its power increased by a few notches. The light also became more dazzling. At this time, Shang Yinchi, the 3 elders, and the 12 deacons worked together to control the formation and launched a counterattack. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. The huge divine light shield released tens of thousands of blade lights and sword shadows, which rained down on Ji Tianqing like a storm. In the sky full of divine light, there were also hundreds of dazzling purple lightning bolts that blasted toward Ji Tianqing. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing still did not move an inch. He did not even care about his own safety. He even had the time to remind Lin Shui, try to stay as far away as possible. Don't get hurt accidentally. Lin Shui was stunned and asked subconsciously, you are in the most dangerous situation, and you still have the time to care about me? Ji Tianqing did not answer. After all, the sky full of divine attacks had already descended and drowned his figure. At this critical moment, he used the infinite sky of turbidity secret technique, and his body became transparent and blurry. The divine light that covered the sky passed through him without any delay and landed on the calm surface of the lake. Instantly, a deafening sound exploded, and huge waves burst out of the lake. This was under the influence of the infinite sky of turbidity. 80% of the divine attacks were neutralized by the world. If not for this, the surrounding several hundred miles of lake surface would have dried up, revealing the bottom of the lake that was tens of thousands of feet deep. The heavenly sect protecting grand array was unbelievably powerful. Bam bam bam. Hundreds of sword shadows hit the divine warship not far away, and there was a series of muffled sounds. The divine warship was knocked to the side and flashed with divine light. Cracks appeared on its surface, and it was slightly damaged. Lin Shui was shocked and angry. She finally believed Ji Tianqing's words. If they were too close, they would be accidentally injured. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was unharmed, she was relieved. She quickly retreated 1,000 miles and observed the situation on the lake. The sect protecting Grand Array's first round of attacks didn't hurt Ji Tianqing. Instead, it made the Thousand Sun Lake boil. Shang Yinchi, the 3 elders, and the deacons were all stunned. They found it unbelievable. This is so strange. How can we not hit him? Again. Shang Yinchi frowned and ordered another attack. Therefore, he, the elders, and the deacons worked together to control the sect protecting Grand Array again. They released the destructive light of the sacred tree and attacked Ji Tianqing. Sword shadows and giant blades thousands of feet long rained down like a storm. All kinds of divine flames, icicles, lightning, and divine power shadows lit up the night sky, dazzling and eye-catching. This sect-protecting Grand Array, which was said to be invincible below the Divine King level, released its strongest power, which could destroy tens of thousands of miles. However, a strange scene appeared again. The sky full of divine attacks and sword shadows all passed through Ji Tianqing's shadow and scattered in the Thousand Sun Lake. Boom! 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 Kaboom! A deafening explosion resounded through the sky. The surface of the lake, which was thousands of miles long, was shaking ceaselessly, rolling up huge waves that soared into the sky and splashing out a watery mist that blotted out the sun. However, Ji Tianqing was still unharmed. This time, Shang Yinchi, the 3 elders, and the 12 deacons opened their eyes wide and saw it clearly. Everyone was finally sure that it wasn't an illusion. It was real. Instantly, everyone was inexplicably shocked. Their hearts were in turmoil, and they couldn't help but exclaim. Damn it! How can this be? What the hell? Why can't we hit him? Despicable beast, what kind of sorcery did he use? While everyone was shocked, their fear grew stronger and stronger. They didn't know what to do. Shang Yinchi didn't give up. He continued to control the sect protecting Grand Array and attacked 8 times in a row. The result didn't change at all. He completely gave up. Knowing that Ji Tianqing was immune to all attacks, he gave up on attacking. Forget it. That kid's sorcery is too strange. No matter how we attack, it's useless. The only thing we can do now is to support the sect protecting Grand Array and stop him from breaking it. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.